Chapter 652. Short brown boots, tight jeans, a coat of the same color as the boots, and a hat and scarf. She didn't bring the picture tube that always hung on her body. After changing into clothes suitable for winter, Nero, who was walking slowly in front of Boss Luo, was probably just a girl with white hair in the city who looked relatively different. No one could associate more with her past, present, and future. Walking in the bustling city, Luocchio found that Nero had a different kind of joy from the past. In front of the cabinet of a cake shop on the street, she pressed her hands on the window glass of the shop, almost sticking her face to the glass. She was staring at a matcha cake that had just been put on the counter. "Do you want to eat it?" Luocchio asked curiously. He had eaten the hotel suite's breakfast about half an hour ago, and the amount was particularly large. Nero nodded and followed her body's instinct. She clapped her hands and begged, "Boss, treat me to one. I don't have money." This poor and magnanimous smile made Luocchio walk into the cake shop helplessly and then come out with the packed matcha cake. "Thank you, boss." Nero ate the cake as she walked with a happy face. She was like a little girl enjoying the winter sunshine. If danger suddenly appeared at this time, would she still be able to maintain this kind of poor and magnanimous smile, as if to tell the world what kind of person she was? It stands to reason that Miss Nero shouldn't encounter financial difficulties. Nero took it for granted. This situation didn't happen before. As for the clubs, they basically had their own secret places all over the world. There were quite a few in this country. After all, among the 26 people who have the right to speak in the club, it seems that several of them are from this country. But as you said, as a member of the Divine Generals, how can they lack pocket money when they are walking outside? I'm talking about the Divine Generals. Boss, do you understand? She faked her death in the battle with Cuck. Now she was temporarily marked as dead on the list of the Michael Club. Naturally, Nero couldn't continue to enjoy her benefits as a Divine General unscrupulously as before. Luocchio watched Nero eat a piece of matcha cake happily with some cake residue left beside her lips. He took out a handkerchief and gave it to her. "Thank you." Nero was not pretentious. She took it and wiped her lips a few times. "Do you want to eat more?" Luocchio asked with a smile. "If you can, please give me another one." Boss Luo nodded. This was the time that Nero bought. She didn't seem to care about using this way. Hence, another matcha cake was placed in front of her as she was a girl. Looking at Nero's happy expression, Luocchio finally found a connection between the current Nero and the Nero he had met in the past. "Is food important to you?" "Yes." Nero stopped and held the remaining half of the cake with both hands. She suddenly whispered, "If there is anything in the world that will never betray you, it must be food. If there's anything in this world that would unconditionally serve you, it would definitely be food." Before humans enjoy life, emotions, and even show hatred, sadness, and so on, before all biological signs, isn't it all because they have food? She looked at Boss Luo. "Since it is such an important food, of course I eat it with gratitude." Luocchio smiled. "Is it delicious?" Nero said softly, "As long as it can fill people's stomachs, it is delicious." Although this was the case, she was not in the state of enjoying delicious food. Whether it was a small piece of cake or a big meal, Nero ate them almost to the extent of swallowing. It seemed that the time to enjoy food was the real luxury for her. Therefore, after she swallowed the second piece of cake, it was obvious that she had swallowed it. Boss Luo stretched out his hand at this time. A bottle of mineral water in the refrigerator of a convenience store across the road disappeared and then fell into his hand. At the same time, 3 yuan appeared on the cashier of the convenience store inexplicably. "Wow, I'm saved." I almost became the first Divine General of the club to choke to death. Of course, this was just a joke. Nero wiped the water stains on her lips with her sleeve. She looked at Luocchio and blinked. "Boss, how much time is left?" "A little more than 5 hours and 17 minutes. 5 hours. Nero suddenly stood up and stretched out her hands to pull up Luocchio. She said excitedly, "In this case, don't waste time. Boss, do you want to have a round with me?" She shouted excitedly. Her eyes were shining with fanaticism, and her face was flushed because of excitement. Nero clamped her legs even more tightly at this time. Go, 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 go. Yes. That's it. Boss, you're great. Harder. Put more strength into it. I'm almost there. It's almost out. Ah. So the big gun that released extremely hot things was lifted up as the victory screen of this arcade mecha game. It appeared in front of Luaccio and Nero. Compared with the huge game machine on the same stage, the opponent's unwilling voice came, "You on the other side? Let's have another round. I'm not afraid of you." Nero stood up directly, stretched out her fingers, and pulled down her eyelids. She made a face at the opponent and stuck out her tongue. The two people on the other side were about 30 years old. Perhaps they had already cultivated their minds, but they unexpectedly gritted their teeth in anger because this was a rather old arcade game. And this was also a game parlor that had the memories of a generation and had been eliminated by the times. In this game parlor, Luaccio once witnessed the birth of a soul. And now, without a doubt, he was immersed in the declining atmosphere of this game parlor. Here it was unusually cold. On the opposite side of the arcade were two people who came to reminisce about their childhood. Perhaps their skills in those days were very good, right? Luaccio held the pink joystick. The game was personally taught by Nero. I didn't expect Miss Nero to be so familiar with the products of this era. Nero rolled her eyes and said, "It's just you guys here, okay? In many places outside, this kind of game parlor is still very popular." "Wow, boss, take it easy. You are too forward. Be careful of landmines." It was the first time for Luaccio to sit in this kind of place and play such a game. It was a novelty. Time was passing by little, and the combination of Nero and Luaccio defeated the two uncles on the opposite side again and again. "No way. We can't win at all. You guys are so powerful." The two uncles finally surrendered helplessly. One of them even bought some drinks from the counter of the game parlor and gave them to Nero and Luaccio. Boss Luo looked at the can of Coke in front of him with some surprise, but Nero had already drunk it without hesitation. Sure enough, it's the best to drink Coke after exercising. Right? The uncle laughed, looking at Nero and the two uncles drinking Coke like friends who met at a snack stall on the roadside. Boss Luo finally reached out to accept this kindness. Time was running out here again, but Nero still continued to sit in front of the machine excitedly. And at this time, the two uncles had already left together. Perhaps they had been good friends since childhood, or perhaps they had met here before, which led to today's fate. Luaccio leaned against the machine. "The game coins are running out. Do you want to continue?" Chapter 653. It had been almost a day since the target had suddenly disappeared, and no traces of him could be found. The young master was currently in a luxurious hotel suite. The curtains were open, allowing the young master to take in about a quarter of the city's sights. The subordinates sent out hadn't come back yet. They wouldn't come back until there was news. That day, when he encountered that strange white-haired human woman, after a fierce battle, this young master used the power of the greedy wolf in the end to gain the upper hand. Of course, if it weren't for the dozens of subordinates around him who sacrificed themselves to hold the opponent back, the outcome would have been different. It's not Kelowna's Taoist magic arts. Which side does it belong to? Compared to this, I'm more concerned about something in this city. Another voice different from a young master's sounded in the room. Greedy wolf, like a shadow, attached to the young master. At this time, a dark thing gushed out from behind the young master. It was like half a werewolf, but only its scarlet eyes could be seen. This werewolf-like shadow was much bigger than the young master. The young master frowned. "You mean Kelowna Shinryu?" "No, our clan has no enmity with Shinryu. I mean, Greedy Wolf Star." The werewolf shadow said indifferently. "Haven't you felt it? Is it the trembling feeling in your blood? Although it's very weak, I'm sure that the real Greedy Wolf Star, the Greedy Wolf clan, must be nearby." The young master's gaze was a little complicated, and he murmured, "The real Greedy Wolf Star." The Greedy Wolf suddenly laughed strangely. "Are you afraid?" The Greedy Wolf was born for the Greedy Wolf. Once the current Greedy Wolf Star chooses to devour the Greedy Wolf. "Ha! Greedy Wolf, you talk too much," the young master said indifferently. "Since this is my destiny, I will accept it calmly. As long as the Greedy Wolf Star can return to our clan, even if I The door of the hotel suite suddenly opened at this moment, and a man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, wearing strange clothes, walked in quickly. Before this, the greedy wolf on the young master had returned. "Young master, we've tracked the white-haired woman. Let's go." The young master's purple pupils flashed with a trace of fierceness. He waved his sleeves and turned around to walk out of the hotel suite. The clan's secret treasure must be taken back. It seemed that the protection time that Nero bought was just to be able to wander around this city. He didn't do anything particularly shocking. She was like an ordinary woman living in the city, sitting on those familiar things to pass the time. After coming out of the game hall, Nero spent 2 hours shopping in a shopping mall. She only looked, but didn't sell. Luaccio asked her curiously why she didn't buy it. She simply replied, "Because I can't." She then pointed at her forehead and smiled. "But if it's here, I can take it away." With less than 3 minutes left, the two came to a riverside park built by the river. At this time, Nero bought 2 ice creams from the ice cream house in the park. Nero was looking at the 2 ice creams as if it was difficult to choose. "It doesn't matter if I don't eat it," Boss Luo said indifferently. Nero gave out the one in her left hand and said seriously, "Boss, this one is smaller. It's yours." Nero didn't lick it with her tongue. She just put the ice cream ball in front of her lips. She probably used a kind of sucking method. The eating speed was still so fast. It was just that there was an essential difference between these cold things and hot food. "Wow, it's so cold." Nero patted her forehead. "Boss, don't you like the taste? Why did you only eat a little? If you don't eat it quickly, it will all melt." Luaccio said at this time, "Miss Nero, it's time. Walk with me for a while." Nero walked in front. "I don't need to protect you. I just want to walk through this place. It shouldn't take much of your time, right? After all, I'm also a regular customer. Don't tell me you don't have a gift." "Of course not." Luaccio followed with a smile. The two walked leisurely and slowly in the green passage near the river. Nero suddenly asked, "Boss, when did you become a boss?" "Well, don't say it first. Let me guess. Before I came out, I got some information from the clubhouse. There are rumors that your shop is older than the few old immortals in the clubhouse. Then, 500 years ago..." Luaccio shook his head. 600 years? The boss still shook his head. "Could it be 1,000 years ago?" Nero looked at Luaccio strangely. "It turns out that you are the real old immortal." Nero's question was about some secrets of the shop. If he really wanted to be honest, it would also reveal the 2 different bosses. Luaccio didn't intend to reveal it, at least before Nero was willing to buy it. "Forget it. It's impossible to guess it." Nero shook her head, then turned to look at the place where the river flowed. "Boss, you said that after obtaining extraordinary power, did your view of the world change?" "I don't doubt the ability of your shop to buy. As long as the customer can afford the price, you can do anything." "In other words, boss, you could do anything, at least I think so." She stepped on the stone pier of the railing by the river, as if she wanted to see farther. "How would you feel then?" "Why do you ask this?" Luaccio asked curiously. "I'm just curious," Nero said indifferently. "I also have extraordinary power. I thought this world was just like this. Since I got Yamato, things have become very boring. It is already such a boring world for me. Then, for you, boss, how unbearable is this boredom?" "So you like pranks more?" Luaccio asked instead of answering. "Apart from that, there are other reasons. Do you know why?" Nero suddenly turned around. Standing on the stone pier, she bent down slightly and looked down with her hands behind her back. "If you want to know, I can tell you, but what do you use to buy my answer?" Luaccio said softly, "Miss Nero, don't you hate businessmen? That's why it's necessary to bargain." Nero narrowed her eyes. The divine general with Yamato, whom Luaccio was familiar with, returned. At this moment, she was no longer the ordinary girl walking in the city, but she who had extraordinary power. Nero stretched out her palm, and Yamato, which was integrated with her body, slowly emerged from her palm at this time. She rotated her shoulders and then stretched. "Well, I've rested enough and eaten enough. Then I'm ready to do something big, boss. Do you want to watch the battle?" Luocchio looked in a certain direction. In the language of the monster clan, there were several strong monster auras rapidly approaching. He looked at Nero and asked, "Do you need help?" Nero shrugged and said, I don't have anything to pay now. Boss, are you a profiteer? Do you want me to sell myself to you so much? Then I'll watch the battle. Luocio smiled slightly. Nero jumped down from the stone pier and walked past Boss Luo. When she was about to pass by, she suddenly stopped. Luocio showed a puzzled expression. Nero showed a wicked smile, reaching out to grab the unfinished ice cream in Boss Luo's hand and swallowed it directly. She ate too fast, so she patted her forehead again and walked forward, then looked back and said, Sure enough, it's better for me to finish it by myself. In fact, I don't want to share it all. She jumped, and the sky was already far away. Luocio found a bench in the park and sat down. There was no one nearby, so he just watched the battle here. Chapter 654. Nero carried Yamato on her shoulder with a smile on her face. She finally stopped on an uninhabited riverbank in the riverside park. Traces of activity could be seen here. Perhaps during the last holiday, many people had come here for a holiday. She picked up the drink bottle buried in the sand and then threw it back. The drink bottle that had become trash accurately fell into the garbage basket in the distance. At the same time, there was a voice in the distance. I really didn't expect that a thief like you would actually have a time when you're concerned about public morals. Nero turned around and looked at the guy who chased after her after she took away the thing. They all seemed to call this guy Young Master. The young master walked out calmly with his hands behind his back. Behind him were 4 men in strange clothes. He looked like a prince who was traveling in a foreign country. Yeah, I'm really a very civic-minded person. Nero shrugged and said, I'll dump you guys in later, and it'll be almost done. A burly man behind the young master rubbed his fists and grinned. You shameless thief, you stole our things, and now you dare to insult our young master to his face. Nero yawned and said, Okay, Uncle, I remember you. Last time you were the first one who was beaten by me. Don't come out and embarrass yourself. What's the matter? Is it still the same old rules? Are you going to gang up on me? If it weren't for your plot last time, how could I? The burly man's face was filled with rage. He bared his teeth, which were like steel teeth used to pounce on beasts. His entire body even began to grow fine, black, and shiny hair. The man grinned. You were hit by the power of our young master's greedy wolf. Now you can still talk big. Wait, I'll treat you well. Lang Sha, step back. The young master stretched out his hand to stop Lang Sha, causing the furious Lang Sha to let out an unwilling roar. It was very clear that Lang Sha instantly began to restrain his violent emotions. Although his gaze was still terrifying, he still obediently retreated. Nero said with disappointment, You don't want to fight? If you're not going to fight, I'm leaving. I'm very curious. At this time, the young master said indifferently, You were missing for almost a day, and then the wounds on your body healed. Did you use a method, or did someone save you? Her injuries have healed. Lang Sha, who was behind the young master, was stunned. The companions beside Lang Sha also frowned, because they all knew that if this woman had a way to heal herself, she wouldn't have had to run away so pathetically. But to heal the erosion of the greedy wolf's power in less than a day was too inconceivable, unless it was someone who was far more powerful than the young master. And in this city, there was probably only that Lord Longjun. The power of the greedy wolf was also a unique mark of their race, so it was impossible for that lord to not know about it. But if that lord knew about it and still saved them, then the relationship between the woman who stole the secret treasure and Lord Long was worth thinking about. Of course, it was also possible that there were other circumstances that allowed the injuries caused by the power of the greedy wolf to disappear. However, compared to this extremely unlikely scenario, they were more inclined towards the former possibility. No wonder young master stopped Lang Sha's action from the beginning. It seemed that he had thought of this long ago. Ahead, looking at this group of monsters who suddenly seemed to be disconnected, Nero couldn't help but whisper, These guys, did they think wrongly? She shook her head and looked at the young master, who was really handsome from a human's point of view. At first, she even thought that this young master was a woman, but she was wearing men's clothes. Who knew that after a fight, it was really a F*** King man? I don't seem to have the obligation to tell you how my injuries are healed, right? The young master said calmly. Anyway, you took away my things, so you have to return them. In addition, you also killed more than a dozen of my entourage. They're all carefully trained warriors, so this account has to be settled. Just right. Nero showed a poor smile. My pocket money has been used up, so I will use you guys to make up for it. This time, I won't be so easily defeated by your strange power. Nero's body appeared in front of the young master at an extremely fast speed. The speed of her body even surpassed the speed of sound. The Yamato in her hand was even more merciless as it slashed toward the young master's body. I touched it. The Yamato cut through the young master's clothes and even made a small wound on the young master's arm. It didn't hit the vital part, but the young master dodged it. The few macho men behind the young master no longer held back at this time. They were furious. Their solid muscles burst out of their clothes, and they completely turned into the appearance of a wolf's head and a human's body. They flew toward Nero from 4 directions. They were all outstanding high-level monsters. They were ruthless and had survived in the harsh environment of the plateau since they were young. They didn't care about their lives when they fought. Nero didn't seem to be at a disadvantage even with 4 against 1. Instead, she easily suppressed these 4 wolf warriors. This woman is very good at scuffles. Looking at this way of fighting, she should be in an environment of killing each other for a long time. Although she looks like she is playing, there is no flaw at all. She is always on high alert. I don't know who used what kind of harsh and cruel environment to cultivate such a monster. The voice of Greedy Wolf sounded from the bottom of the young master's heart. In addition, the strange weapon in her hand is really strange. It can easily tear my defense and cause damage to you. Try to be careful. As the vessel of Greedy Wolf, you are not good at close combat. The young master glanced at the wound on his arm. If the other party is a monster cultivated in such a way, didn't I inherit Greedy Wolf by using the method of killing hundreds of voodoo and leaving only 1 voodoo? In that case, I'm also a monster. I understand. The young master nodded. Cross-like cracks began to float in the purple pupils. I don't have a very good close combat ability, but the power of Greedy Wolf is the best spell attack. The strange purple energy began to quietly seep into the riverbank. When the range of dozens of meters fell into the range of Greedy Wolf's power, Nero suddenly felt that her body became abnormally heavy. Her whole body seemed to have fallen into a swamp, and the speed of swinging the sword suddenly decreased a lot. At the same time, Lang Sha's heavy punch hit her back without hesitation. This punch was obviously much heavier than the previous one. It seemed that the power suddenly increased. The 4 wolf warriors were still blocking Nero's 4 corners. Because of the special situation her body endured, she couldn't react in time and was attacked by Lang Sha's punch. Blood also flowed out from the corner of Nero's mouth. Although she didn't know what the demonic power of these monsters could do, at least she could feel that the surroundings were full of this strange power. Nero narrowed her eyes at this time. You set a trap for me, and now you put buffs on your teammates. It's quite like a sacrifice. The young master said calmly outside the array at this time. As long as you surrender and return the stolen item, I can promise you that as long as you compensate for my subordinates with your life, I won't torture you. Thank you very much. Nero shrugged. Then she suddenly became expressionless, but about giving buffs. I could do it too. Lines of black characters began to move from the hilt of Yamato to Nero's arm, then spread to her whole body, and then covered her face. Her body seemed to be tattooed with strange patterns, and her pale hair instantly turned gray. She said indifferently, I'm very afraid of pain. I'll deal with you all in 1 minute. As soon as she finished speaking, under the gaze of the 4 wolf warriors, Nero's figure actually disappeared abruptly. At the same time, Lang Sha only felt something flashed in front of him, and then he saw his own body. That was its own body, a body that had lost its head. Its head had actually been separated from its body in an instant. The first one, Nero's body, flashed again and then disappeared. When she appeared again, she had already appeared behind the second wolf warrior. Yama is a demon sword that seriously overdraws vitality. This Ms. Nero should not live for more than 3 years. Her body is already full of holes. It was Miss Maid's voice. On the park bench, Boss Luo slowly opened his eyes, but his vision didn't stop. Instead, he asked, 3 years could do a lot of things. That's true. Yi smiled slightly. Master, your afternoon tea. Yi was probably the only one who would purposely bring the afternoon tea here. Then, today's afternoon tea. Ice cream? Luochio was slightly taken aback. He felt that this was the first time he ate ice cream during afternoon tea. The exquisite utensils contained something as cold as white snow. It's just made. Master, please taste it. Yi said softly, the ice cream outside has too much pigment. How can I let Master eat it? Chapter 655. Ding! The sound of metal clashing. When Yama waved at the second wolf warrior, it had no time to care about the fact that it had died tragically. The result of years of training, the instinct of survival, and the strength as a senior monster made it wave its sharp claws and block the attack of Yama behind it. It thought that it could escape this disaster, and it secretly rejoiced in its heart. Unexpectedly, at this time, it felt a great fear in its heart, as if something was whispering in its heart. Devil like hell. It was a language that it couldn't understand. It only knew that when this whisper sounded, its whole body became abnormally stiff, and there was a kind of fear spreading. In just an instant, it followed in the footsteps of Wolf Kill. It had blocked the first attack with its absolute strength, but it couldn't block the second attack that didn't stop. The second wolf warrior died on the spot, and its blood splashed on the spot. Seeing this scene, their young master suddenly shouted in a deep voice. He clapped his hands in front of him, and his clothes slightly fluttered. The power of Een Greedy Wolf was rapidly condensing. Een Greedy Wolf, the only priest of the Greedy Wolf clan, existed to serve the real Greedy Wolf star. Seeing the warriors of the clan die so tragically, a sense of grief and indignation emerged in the heart of this young master. Big Dipper defying 7 stars. Greedy Wolf descends. Nero, who was flashing toward the third wolf warrior, instantly retreated a few meters at this moment. Although she was no longer suppressed by the strange power around her, it didn't mean that the strange power had disappeared. She just crazily improved her physical ability in a short period of time. It was not that the power of Een Greedy Wolf disappeared, but her ability to resist the pressure greatly improved in an instant. But at this time, the strange suppression power had clearly disappeared. Yama's whisper also sounded in Nero's ears, and this time, it was a warning voice. "The young master? Then, let's kill him first." Nero directly gave up on the third Wolf Clan warrior that was within reach, and turned to directly attack the young master of the Wolf Clan. But at this moment, the other party's hands were naturally hanging down, and his eyes were downcast, as if he had lost his soul. It was as if he had already fallen asleep, but Yamato's whispers were becoming more and more intense. The Wolf Clan's young master's appearance right now was very dangerous. When Yamato was about to pierce the forehead of the Wolf Tribe Young Lord, the Wolf Tribe Young Lord finally reacted. It wasn't dodging or blocking, but rather grabbing. The young lord of Wolf Tribe stealthily grabbed Yamato's sharp blade when it was about to pierce into his forehead. Holding it firmly, Nero even had a feeling that the knife was inserted into a cube of pure iron. She abruptly twisted Yamato's hilt, and the rotating blade scraped against the young master's palm before she pulled it away. At this time, Nero saw clearly that the cheeks under the young master's eyes had a purple mark like a tear stain. Moreover, the young master gave off a very bad feeling. It was the same feeling she had when she faced Cook's fatal blow. Although it wasn't as terrifying as when she was in the club, it was still rare for her to feel this way ever since she inherited Yamato. "Oh, it seems that there's also a way to improve my strength." Although his tone was relaxed, Nero's whole body was as tense as a tightened clockwork, ready to explode at any moment. This is the real power of the Greedy Wolf Star. Although it's just borrowing, it's enough to deal with you. The young master's voice sounded slowly. This was similar to the divine strike, Taoist magic arts, and the secret cultivation sects in the upper part Kelowna, also known as divine general. Big Dipper defying 7 stars, greedy wolf descends. Nero knew that it was not good, but the tension between life and death made her extremely excited. Facing death was also the moment when she was more compatible with Yamato. Only by constantly accumulating at this moment could she reach the third state of compatibility between her and Yamato, the state of Demon of Yama, that was always recorded in the literature of the Michael Club. That would be an invincible, transcendent warrior. She was obviously fanatical to reach this state, in order to get back the secret treasure and avenge the death of her subordinates. The young master was also doing her best. Nero had lived in a place like the 8th Academy since she was a child. As long as she could win, there was a smile on her face. She retreated instead of advancing. It was not to escape, but to shift her target from the young master to the 2 wolf warriors. At this time, it was a little difficult to deal with the young master of the wolf clan, but it was much easier to deal with the 2 wolf warriors behind. At the moment of her companion's death, this seemingly young master would at least not be indifferent. This kind of battle where you die and I die is always so cruel. "Don't you dare!" the young master yelled angrily. With the emergence of the majestic power of the greedy wolf star, the young master's speed even surpassed Nero's. She blocked in front of Nero first. At the same time, a mysterious collapsed space appeared and disappeared, swallowing Nero directly in an instant. At the same time, the young master also stepped directly into this strange collapsed space. The dark sky, the dark earth, the roaring and howling, as well as the endless sound of demonic wolves, seemed to be in a huge demonic domain. This was what Nero felt when she was sucked into this collapsed space. The young master of the wolf clan was above her at this moment, and a dazzling purple light erupted from her body. The oppression Nero endured at this time had reached the limit. She suddenly changed Yamato to her left hand, then she clenched the hilt of the sword with her right hand and made a posture of drawing the sword in the air. "Don't pretend to be dead. This is not that, boss. I don't believe you will be afraid. Don't you want to eat me in the end? If I die here, you won't be able to eat me." Nero looked down at the demonic sword and sneered. Wisps of pitch-black power began to move around Nero's body. At this time, the young master of the wolf clan turned into a purple meteor and fell directly toward Nero. Finally, Nero pulled out the Yama blade and swung it forward. Yamashura. The 2 powerful forces intertwined with each other in this strange space, causing a strong turbulence in this space. Rumble. At this moment, outside the collapsed space, 2 wolf clan warriors collapsed on the ground at the same time. The Big Dipper defying 7 stars was not an ability that could be used casually. The young master needed to make the general spirit of greed, and, as a sacrifice, the young master needed to make some contributions. Under normal circumstances, she was extracting their power from all sides. The 4 wolf clan warriors who had been following the young master existed for this purpose. But the consumption that was originally shared by the 4 wolf clan warriors was directly superimposed on the remaining 2 at this time. The result was, of course, they had to kneel. Now, the 2 wolf clan warriors could not fight back at all. Any little monster that came would be able to kill them. "Young master should be okay, right?" a big man said weakly. Its voice was a little worried because it really didn't expect that the human woman was so terrifying that she directly killed 2 warriors, including Lang Sha, in an instant. "Don't talk nonsense. The young master of the Greedy Wolf clan won't lose." The other one snorted. The Greedy Wolf clan might even have the power to fight against Shinryu. Although it was said like this, it was obvious that these words contained a sense of self-comfort. They might have the power to fight against Kelowna's Shinryu, but it was just a fight. This was a kind of heartening saying passed down from mouth to mouth in the Greedy Wolf clan. If they really wanted to fight against Kelowna's Shinryu, it had never happened. At this moment, the strange collapsed space suddenly changed dramatically. The 2 werewolf warriors were shocked at the same time. They only felt a terrifying pressure leaking out from the collapsed space. It was changing shape, as if it couldn't bear the explosion of power inside, and was about to burst, just like a balloon that was about to burst. Finally, an explosive energy turbulence was released from his collapsed space. The two Wolf Clan warriors were hit directly by this overwhelming energy turbulence at the same time, and they fainted in an instant. Two different figures were thrown out of the collapsed space at the same time, and each of them fell in different directions. The surroundings had become a mess because of the raging energy flow. Fortunately, it was just on the riverbank, so it made it seem like a strong storm had blown here. It was just that a large number of fish in the riverbed had been blown out, scattered randomly on the riverbank, flapping their tails and struggling to die. Soon after, a voice jumped from the sky all of a sudden. At the moment of landing, the figure's body was squatting on the ground. It was not used to cushion the impact of landing, but purely a personal habit. Because the one who landed here was Sun Xiaosheng, the owner of the Elysium Bar. Sun Xiaosheng put his palm on his eyebrows at this time and looked around. Who was fighting here just now? Why didn't you call me? Hey, no one is here? Sun Xiaosheng suddenly looked disappointed. He was originally having fun with the monsters in the bar. Suddenly, he felt a powerful monster power. His combative instinct was suddenly stimulated, and he came directly without saying a word. Sun Xiaosheng frowned. After walking on the riverbank for a while, he found two headless corpses. This is the Wolf Clan, right? The dead monsters revealed their original appearance at this moment. That was the monster's body, two abnormally huge wolf bodies. These two are still alive. Hey, wake up! Sun Xiaosheng grabbed one of them without any pressure and waved his hand to slap him a few times. Wake up! As for the other one did the same thing, slapping it in the face. However, he just couldn't wake it up. It seemed that it was seriously injured. In fact, it was completely dying. Sun Xiaosheng scratched his head and stood up with a distressed face. This is difficult. Except for fighting, I don't know how to heal. So, the little theater in Brother Xiaosheng's mind immediately lit up. At this time, he could use this as an excuse to send these two guys to Old Grandma. Although Old Grandma Long was not here for the time being, it was Long who was here now, Zijuan's niece. Because of the medicine theft incident last time, Brother Xiaosheng wanted to get close to her, but he couldn't put down his face. Now was the most suitable opportunity. If this little girl knew that he was so kind to save the dying and heal the wounded, she would say a few good words in front of Zijuan. Wouldn't it be great? Thank me. So, Brother Xiaosheng picked up the two wolf warriors who were still alive and put them on his waist. Then, he looked around and saw that there was no one around. Suddenly, he raised his head and kicked the two wolf warriors' corpses and heads directly into the river. After doing all this, Brother Xiaosheng left happily as if nothing had happened. Cough, cough. Nero was in pain all over her body. The llama in her hand could barely keep her standing. After her body was thrown out of the weird space, she originally fell toward the river, but she was not by the river at this time, and there was no wet place on her body. Instead, it was quite clean, because she had made a deal with the boss. The protection time was deducted after she could move at will, so at the moment when she fell into the water, Nero used the effect of this transfer. This time, of course, she was not thrown into the sea by the boss. There were green mountains and clear waters here. She was now in a bamboo forest, and in the middle of this bamboo forest, there was a small wooden house built. The wooden house in this bamboo forest seemed to have been abandoned for a long time, and it was surrounded by weeds. Nero walked to the door of the wooden house, pushed it open forcefully, and then her body fell directly into it. Her whole body curled up on the ground, and her body suffered a huge pain when the power of Yama faded away. Extreme pain, but looking at this empty wooden house, there was no trace of pain on Nero's face. Instead, there was a happy smile on her face. I'm going home. Dad, Mom. She closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep alone. Wind-chasing Wolf was very unhappy as he kicked the football and walked on the path. The reason was that he had made an appointment to play football with his friends, but it was obvious that he had been let off the plane. But at this time, a figure suddenly fell out of the alley in front of Juefeng. Who is this? Chapter 656. There was a traffic jam on the road, so Zhu Maolin had to open the window to get some fresh air. The short film shot with the newcomer, Xiaolu, had also been completed. Zhu Maolin took 2 different films to the client's company this afternoon. His subordinate, Tboy, accompanied him. Tboy was swiping his mobile phone at this moment. Suddenly, he frowned. Wow. What the hell is going on in this world? What's wrong? Zhu Maolin asked casually. Tboy put the phone screen in front of Zhu Maolin at this time. Look, this is the situation of the innermost riverbank in Riverside Park that someone just took. The riverbank is full of stranded dead fish. After this video was released, the management staff had not arrived yet, but those who picked up the fish arrived first. Here, this is the scene. Zhu Maolin just glanced at it casually, then he lost interest. Instead, he paid more attention to when the motorcade in front could be cleared. Manager, are you worried about the appointed time? Tboy said at this moment. Anyway, aren't you and the person in charge of this client's company old classmates in university? You can make a call and inform them. We don't want to be stuck in traffic like this. He didn't bother others as much as he did in the past. But in this case, there was really no other way. Zhu Maolin nodded. I'll make a phone call to inform them. Boy, I'm afraid this car won't move for a while. You can get out and buy some drinks back. Okay. After Tboy got out of the car, Zhu Maolin called his old classmate. He was the kind of person who had high requirements for himself. If it was not necessary, he was unwilling to delay, wait, and so on. Sorry, this is the situation. Xiaofei, please wait over there for a while. No problem. We have been classmates for so many years. You don't have to be polite. Don't worry. If you can't do it, change it to tomorrow. Zhu Maolin thought for a while. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If there is still a traffic jam, I will find another way to come over. Another way? Are you going to ride a motorcycle over? You haven't ridden a motorcycle on the road for many years, right? It has been some time. Zhu Maolin smiled subconsciously. There was indeed a traffic jam on the road, but at this time, it was officially the world of motorcycles. At this time, a man wearing a helmet was riding a motorcycle and passing by him. He climbed to the front in a carefree manner. There was a girl on the motorcycle, hugging him tightly. She should be smiling, right? Zhu Maolin didn't see it clearly. He just had this feeling. In life, how much time is wasted in traffic jams? Zhu Maolin muttered, looking at the direction where the motorcycle disappeared. He seemed to be a little distracted. What surprised Long was that it was lunchtime, but someone actually knocked on the door of her pet hospital. Logically speaking, at this time, it should be Mo Xiaofei who temporarily replaced the little butterfly monster as a free laborer. But Mo Xiaofei had already said that he would only take the time to practice after school in the afternoon. Long had to climb to the basement and look at the surveillance video here. The guy who is knocking on the door sneakily is Sun Xiaosheng. What is this guy doing here again? Longer frowned, but looking at the screen, in addition to Sun Xiaosheng, there were 2 other unconscious and shirtless brawny men. She couldn't help but feel even more strange. After a while, Longer finally opened the back door of the hospital. Only Chi-Chi Kamaya knew the truth about her current appearance after Shinryu's power was taken away. So, if she had to, she would never reveal this to Sun Xiaosheng, this big trouble. So Longer braced herself and said with a childish voice and inner shame, "Oh, you're not the one who came to steal last time." F***CK. What do you mean by I came to steal last time? Brother Xiaosheng immediately put on a stern face, but when he thought that he came here with a sweet intention, he immediately searched his body for a while before taking out a lollipop. He then revealed a thunderous smile. "Little girl, do you want to eat a lollipop? My lollipop is very big. You can't find it anywhere else." Chi-Chi Kamaya casually said before that as long as a little girl was given a lollipop, it was the most effective way to break the silence between older males and younger females. Bang dash. The door closed. Hey, if you don't like this one, I have a second one. Brother Xiaosheng was taken aback. Then he knocked on the door again. "Little sister, my lollipop is really delicious. Say something. Damn pervert. Get out of here." F***CK. How am I a pervert? Brother Xiaosheng was stunned and scratched his head. "If you don't want to eat, I will eat it myself. So Brother Xiaosheng, who was shouting for the lollipop, continued to knock on the door and said, "Well, I saw two injured wolf demons outside. They don't look like they are from here. Do you want to see? If you don't want to see, I will leave them outside." Wolf Clan? Longer opened the door again and frowned as she appeared in front of Brother Xiaosheng. At the same time, she looked at the two wolf warriors who were sitting behind Brother Xiaosheng and leaning against the wall. These two warriors tore their clothes during the battle. At this time, their bodies were exposed. A strange purple tattoo could be seen on the left chest. Long couldn't help but frown. This is the greedy wolf clan on the plateau? Why are they here? They shouldn't. Shouldn't they be attending the Penglai conference on Mount Tai's Nantian Gate? Why are they here? Greedy wolf clan? Brother Xiaosheng asked curiously. What is that? Why don't I know about it? Longer rolled her eyes at son Xiaosheng and said casually, "You monkey, you just got the inheritance of the ancient demon beast by chance. If you weren't a wild monkey on the mountain, how much do you know about the demon beast world? And you haven't been down the mountain for a long time. After you went down the mountain, you only know how to cause trouble everywhere. You haven't been to the plateau at all. There are a lot of things you don't know. Because it's cold there. It's a barren land. Why would I go there?" Son Xiaosheng shook his head. "And since I met your aunt, Zijuan, I don't want to leave here. By the way, where's my Zijuan? Don't talk nonsense. Move these two guys in." Longer reached out and pointed. Son Xiaosheng pointed to himself. "Me?" Longer glared and said, "Is it me? Hurry up." "Oh, okay." Son Xiaosheng nodded instinctively. He turned around and carried the two wolf warriors again. At this moment, he found that there seemed to be something wrong. Why are they so obedient? Also, why is the tone of this little guy so similar to Old Lady Long? Moreover, didn't she look a little similar to that old woman? Wait, what did this little guy call Zijuan? Aunt? Who is this old lady to Yi Zijuan? She was also his aunt? How is this relationship calculated? The Xinyuan royal family seems to have no descendants, right? So that is to say, could it be this little girl is Old Lady Long's illegitimate child or something like that? F***CK. Brother Xiaosheng suddenly felt that he seemed to have discovered something incredible. It was a big news in the demon realm. "Hey, what are you doing? Bring them in." Longer shouted impatiently. Okay, I'll be right there." Under the command of Longer, son Xiaosheng quickly helped the two wolf warriors into a special treatment room. But when he planned to walk in himself, he was glared at by Longer. He had to stop awkwardly. "I'll wait outside." Sure enough, she has the true inheritance of Old Lady Long. This little stare is exactly the same. Brother Xiaosheng rubbed his chin outside the treatment room and thought secretly. At this moment, a pure and majestic power of Shinryu slowly spread out, and the control was extremely precise. It did not exceed the scope of this hospital. Feeling the power of Shinryu that was exactly the same as Long Shuo, Brother Xiaosheng suddenly snapped his fingers. I guessed right. The old lady really has a lover, and she has offspring. She even has offspring of her offspring. TSK. Brother Xiaosheng exclaimed in a low voice outside the door of the treatment room. And then he was really shocked by this lover. He didn't know who he was. He could actually kill Kelowna's Shinryu. With the Dragon Granny's strong personality, she was still willing to give birth to a child for this lover. And after so many years, there was no news of this in the demon realm. Could it be that this lover was even fiercer than the Dragon Granny? Thinking about it, if not, how could the old lady succumb? Brother Xiaosheng nodded and muttered to himself. This is a real powerhouse, a veritable dragon knight. He's my idol. When can I let Zijuan give birth to a child for me? It was just that this Shinryu's power dissipated quickly about a few minutes. However, the door of the treatment room had not yet opened, so son Xiaosheng sat directly on the floor and waited in boredom. In the treatment room, Longer frowned and looked at the two wolf warriors. They were saved, but it would take some time to wake up. It couldn't be helped. A few minutes of Shinryu's time limit was too much. It's just they actually lost so much life. Did they use Greedy Wolf's descent? Chapter 657. There was a very noisy sound all around. It sounded like the wind was blowing out. When it opened its eyes, it found that it saw a crimson cloud. And in front of it, it saw a little boy standing on the fence with his hands open, as if he wanted to fly away with the wind. It didn't know why, but such a figure subconsciously attracted it. It stood up and walked towards this figure. However, it had forgotten the fact that it was heavily injured. It only took 2 steps before it fell to the ground. "You're awake?" Jue Feng heard the movement, so it turned around and jumped down from the fence. It walked to the front of it and helped it up. "Are you okay? Who are you? Where's this place?" "My name is Jue Feng." Jue Feng rubbed its nose and looked around. "Here? This is where I live, my home." But here, it looked around. Huge pipes crisscrossed, and there was a huge water tank. It was just casually built with cardboard boxes and wood at the place where the pipes intersected. It couldn't even be called a nest. In fact, it was just the rooftop of the building. "Yes." Jue Feng nodded. "Actually, this place is very good. By the way, what's your name? How did you get hurt?" Greedy Wolf." No matter how it called, it didn't respond. It was probably the aftereffect of using Greedy Wolf's descent. Plus, it was attacked by the white-haired woman, so it suffered a lot of damage. Was it sleeping now? Even its body, it shook its head. "It's my business, you'd better not ask too much. Thank you for saving me. I'm leaving now. If there's a chance, I'll repay you." As it said, it held the wall next to it and planned to leave. But its body staggered as if it would fall down at any time. In fact, after a few steps, it couldn't bear it anymore and was about to fall to the ground again. Jue Feng was shocked and quickly jumped over. He stretched out his hand and scooped it up. "Hey, what's wrong with you? Don't force yourself. Let go of me," it said softly. "I said, don't force yourself if you can't. Look at you, you can't even walk." Jue Feng frowned. "Don't be so stubborn. Let me tell you, I used to be very stubborn, so I suffered a lot. Sometimes, you have to accept the good intentions of others. Let go of me." She insisted with a hint of anger in her voice. Your hand, let go." "Hand?" Jue Feng was stunned. Only then did he realize that the place his palm touched was a little uncomfortable. Jue Feng quickly released his hand and said, I didn't do it on purpose." "Even if you did it on purpose, now, Before she could finish her sentence, she fainted on the ground again. Jue Feng looked at her awkwardly. At first, when he saw her fall in front of him, his first thought was to send her to the hospital. Later, he felt a very weak monster power in her body. Naturally, he couldn't send her to an ordinary hospital. He should send her to Long Shirua's place. However, Jue Feng had been a vagrant for a long time, so he was careful before he took action. In this city, when monsters went to the pet hospital for treatment, they were usually really sick. Usually, if they were injured because of fighting, they would be scolded by the Shinryu of Kelowna. Long Shirua had ordered many times that monsters were not allowed to fight in this city. However, some monsters were born to be aggressive, so they couldn't abide by this rule very well. Once there was a bloody incident, as long as they were still alive, they would rather hide and recuperate slowly than face the Dragon King. Jue Feng didn't plan to send her to the Dragon King before he figured out why she was so seriously injured. Jue Feng looked at her pale face and suddenly became absent-minded. Probably because she was weak, she couldn't maintain her human appearance very well. A furry silver tail grew out from the back of her buttocks, and her ears became sharp. Seems like she's also a wolf. Wind-chasing Wolf approached her and looked at her. Her delicate face made him breathless, especially when he looked at the pair of light pink lips. He really wanted to take her for himself. In an instant, this terrifying thought appeared out of nowhere in Windchaser's mind. When he came back to his senses, his face was almost stuck to the other person's. Jue Feng was so scared that his back was drenched in cold sweat, and he jumped away. No. How can I, Master Jue Feng, do such a thing?" Jue Feng shook his head vigorously. He wanted to calm himself down, so he simply jumped directly into the water tank used to store water on the roof. And so cold. However, her body was really soft, very soft. Number 18 seemed to be keen to contact Zhu Maolin in Little Lu's appearance. For example, today, number 18 planned a good show to meet Zhu Maolin. As long as Zhu Maolin came out of the client's company, they would have a chance encounter. It was just that Zhu Maolin encountered a traffic jam on the road. It took a long time for the road to clear up. Therefore, when Zhu Maolin came to the client's company, it was almost evening. No one knew when Zhu Maolin was still discussing with the client's company, so number 18 had to modify her actions again. Of course, such behavior seemed to be a little superfluous in Daz's opinion. He didn't quite understand what was going on in this senior black soul envoy's mind. But what happened on the other side of the river just now? Did Jean Lu just warn me? Taisetsu looked at number 18, who was staring at the client's company floor where Zhu Maolin was located, and asked. Number 18 said indifferently, I'm not interested in what happened. I just know that the master and Miss Yu were nearby at that time. So even if something happens, it's not up to us to ask more. We just need to do our part. Seducing someone to have an affair is also part of the job. Taisetsu was powerless to complain in his heart. I still don't understand. Isn't the club supposed to let the guests buy things? Even if Zhu Maolin's affair is successful, at most, it will destroy the relationship between the couple, right? Then what does Zhu Maolin, as the patron, want to buy? Regret? But if he regrets, what will he want? You finally came out. Number 18 sneered at this time. After lifting the black robe on her body, she once again changed into Little Lu's appearance and came to the back corner of the building. She looked at Taisetsu and said indifferently, It's your turn. Remember to act more realistically for me. Don't make any mistakes. Are you clear? Yes. Taisetsu sighed. Your family is very poor. Your father borrowed a lot of money from loan sharks, and I'm a gangster who is here to collect your debt. With that said, Taisetsu's body naturally showed an unusual bandit aura. Number 18 glanced at him and nodded. And you really look like a good actor. Collecting debts was often done before washing one's hands on a golden plate. So Taisetsu felt that this was also considered as acting in his own character. However, isn't this kind of play very old-fashioned? Taisetsu sighed again, waiting for Zhu Maolin to come out of the building. It seemed that after Nero teleported away when he fell into the river, Mississippi Maid's smile was much brighter. Boss Luo's perspective also returned at this moment, and he returned to the club with Mississippi Maid. Out of curiosity, Boss Luo also looked at the situation of the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan. I didn't expect that the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan would meet Zhuefeng in the end. Mississippi Maid, who accompanied him, smiled slightly. Greedy Wolf and Greedy Wolf Star are separated by thousands of mountains and rivers, but they met here. Is it a fateful encounter? What would happen after the collision was a matter of the future. Boss Luo just smiled and didn't speak because at this time, the club welcomed guests. The bell in front of the door suddenly rang, and a woman looked around blankly. She was still carrying a bag in her hand. Why did I suddenly? The boss had already got up to greet her and greeted softly. Welcome to the shop. Is there anything I can help you with? Miss Ho Chin Yuhan? That's right. The guest who walked in was the wife of Zhu Maolin, the investor who was being followed by number 18. Ho Chin Yuhan. Chapter 658. Even if they were old classmates and friends for many years, from a business standpoint, the negotiation representative of the client company did not blindly like the second short film recommended by Zhu Maolin. Although the second film was indeed more sensational, Xiao Fei had to consider the additional effects brought by the popularity of the heroine in the first film, and so on. But in the end, after a round of negotiations, Xiao Fei still bought the second short film, because the cost of the second film wasn't high, it could even be described as cheap, and the quality was quite high. Therefore, it could be broadcasted on other levels of the TV station as a compliment. This way, the advertising effect might be better. Generally speaking, it was a pleasant meeting. Maolin, thank you for your hard work. After the meeting, Xiao Fei came to Zhu Maolin. They were in a relationship where they could talk about everything. Xiao Fei handed Zhu Maolin a cigarette. Zhu Maolin shook his head and said that he quit. Xiao Fei smoked by himself. The fog was a little thick, so he opened the window. The city outside was already lit up. He looked at Zhu Maolin and suddenly said, Speaking of which, how long has it been since the two of us got together? Zhu Maolin thought for a while and said, More than half a year? The last time seemed to be in April or May. Xiao Fei was a little stunned. He smacked his lips a few times. Has it been so long? Why do I feel like it's only been 2 or 3 months? Zhu Maolin nodded. It has been so long. The last time I saw you, your belly didn't seem so big. Xiao Fei touched his belly and laughed. People say that middle-aged people get fat. I will only be 30 next year. It seems that it is ahead of schedule. Thinking about 7 or 8 years ago, when I was still in college, I was still in good health. Thin. Zhu Maolin only said one word. Xiao Fei suggested, why don't we have a weekend party after I finish this advertising project? Call your wife. I haven't rested for a long time. My wife and children at home don't welcome me home. No need. Zhu Maolin shook his head. I still have a project on hand. I'm afraid I can't spare the time. Work is necessary, but you can't become a slave to work, right? I say, Maolin, shouldn't you stop once in a while? Xiao Fei frowned and suddenly said, I say, Maolin, are you and your wife still thinking about that matter? It's been a long time, right? Zhu Maolin just patted Xiao Fei's shoulder gently. That's it. I have to go back to the company to clean up. Let's talk next time. All right, as you wish. Xiao Fei nodded and didn't insist too much. After Zhu Maolin left, Xiao Fei planned to finish the cigarette. He continued to look at the city outside, thinking about the scene when he had just graduated from school 6 or 7 years ago. He had also forgotten to eat and sleep like this. Many people also forgot to eat and sleep. Under the neon lights, people hurried to and fro. Often, they neglected many things. He was unable to clearly measure the proportion of what he had gained and what he had lost in this process. However, he was still satisfied with his current life. Although he was a little tired, there was always some excitement waiting for him to relax. All in all, for Xiao Fei, tomorrow was still something to be hoped for and cherished. Tomorrow was still something to be hoped for and cherished. This was the slogan of the public service advertisement. It was on the advertising board at the bus station. Ho Chin Yuhan, who was sitting here waiting for the bus, had been looking at it for a long time. She was suddenly a little curious about the person who came up with such an advertising slogan. Was he really so strong in his heart? And was he optimistic enough to face all the hardships? Or perhaps this was just an empty sentence that was occasionally pieced together after a large number of words were accumulated. Perhaps there were really optimistic and positive people who could overcome all difficulties. After all, the population base of this world was so huge. The buses came and left one by one in front of her. Some were the buses she should take, and some were the ones she didn't need. However, she missed the one she needed, and then looked at the one she didn't need. She was unwilling to let her body move. The pedestrians on the road seemed to be fast-forwarded in the camera. They were in all shapes and sizes, from left to right and from right to left. Just how long had it been like this? She didn't even want to think about this question. She was even more willing to stop thinking. If she could stop her brain cells from working, would there be such a situation of uncontrollable thoughts? Ho Chin Yuhan covered her face with both hands and cried in this bustling street. The passers-by were still hurrying to and fro. Everything seemed to be a silent pantomime to her. She didn't know who was singing whose monologue. Are you okay? There were still kind-hearted people. Ho Chin Yuhan heard the voice in her ear. She raised her head at once. It was an aunt in her 50s, showing a concerned look. Ho Chin Yuhan shook her head, stood up, lowered her head, and didn't say a word. She quickly left in front of the kind aunt, and then walked aimlessly on the street. The above was what she experienced before coming to this place. It should be these things. However, Ho Chin Yuhan had no impression of how she came to this place. She just felt that the decorative style here had an indescribable taste. It was like in the gap between the new and the old time, which made her feel peaceful. Under the flickering candlelight, a young man was looking at her with a smile. At the same time, there was another woman who was as beautiful as a dream standing beside him. Everything could be bought. This was a place where people could get what they wanted. This mysterious boss explained the meaning of this place to her. She naturally believed it. It seemed that in her overall cognition, there was no denial of the illogical power of this place. You want a child? Luochio looked at Ho Chin Yuhan. This was the request she made according to her thoughts at the moment. The negotiations in the club had always been like this. The guests would always say what they wanted at this moment. As for whether it was right, whether it was worth it or not, it was up to the guests to decide, even if they would regret it in the future. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "If you just want a child, why don't you plan to adopt one? If it's just for emotional sustenance, there should be examples of deeper sustenance, even if there is no blood relationship. In this case, I feel that the guests may not need to get it from us." If the guests wanted to do business, Ho Chin-yuan thought that the boss was very strange. It was like he was persuading the guests to think about it again. She couldn't even tell whether the young man was being kind or hypocritical. "No, if it's not my child, it won't work." Ho Chin-yuan shook her head. Her eyes were firmer and more paranoid than a few minutes ago. "Then I understand." Luochio nodded. "We really have no reason to refuse a persistent guest. However, I ask again, we can give you a child that belongs to you and your husband, but the cost." The boss stretched out his hand in front of Ho Chin-yuan, and flower cards appeared in front of her. These are the things she could use to pay. "As long as you don't choose, you can still withdraw this request," Luochio finally said, "but in the same way, once you decide, you can't change it. So we hope that you can consider it carefully. After all, we don't want you to hate us when we collect this part of the fee." After looking at the flower cards one by one, Ho Chin-yuan looked at Luochio with a complicated expression. She seemed to have become hesitant. The price marked here was forming an indecisive balance in her heart. She would hesitate at the last moment of making a decision. In other words, when there was still room for hesitation, it was normal to hesitate. The boss had good patience, waiting calmly for Ho Chin-yuan's decision. He didn't urge her, nor did he give her any advice. He was so calm that he seemed to be integrated with the candle flames burning peacefully around him. Can I think about it again?" Ho Chin-yuan didn't have the courage to choose any of the flower cards in the end. "Of course." Boss Luo smiled and said, "We are not forcing you. Moreover, the guests don't have to worry about missing this opportunity. Because, strictly speaking, we are always on your side. The main thing is, if you remember this point, then you can at any time." It was like the whisper of an angel, but also like the whisper of a devil. When Ho Chin-yuan came back to her senses, there were still passers-by who were rushing home after work. Everyone was in a hurry because there was always a place to go. Ho Chin-yuan found that she suddenly couldn't remember what the mysterious boss looked like. Ho Chin-yuan subconsciously took out her mobile phone and hesitated for a moment. "Ho Chin-yuan, do you have to work overtime tonight?" "Husband, I just finished a meeting at Xiao Fei's company, and I have to rush back to the company. If everything goes well, I should be able to come back earlier." "What's the matter?" "I just met," but she quickly deleted these words and changed them to type. "Then let's talk about it when you come back." "Husband, if it's too late, don't wait for me." Ho Chin-yuan didn't respond to this sentence. When the elevator came to the lobby of the building, Zhu Maolin waited for a while, but he didn't get a text message from his wife. He shook his head and remembered what Xiao Fei had said to him. So he typed the words, "Xiao Fei said, do you want to have a family gathering?" But he quickly deleted these words. In the end, he didn't send any text messages. "Let's go back to the company," he said to himself. Zhu Maolin drove the car and stopped at the place where he was about to return to the company. He planned to buy something to eat as dinner and then continue to work overtime. For him, food was just to appease his hunger. Help! A wretched figure suddenly bumped into Zhu Maolin. At the same time, there was a man with murderous eyes. Just the moment he looked at this man, Zhu Maolin felt like he was being stared at by a lion. "Help me, please." It should be a woman hiding behind him at this time. Zhu Maolin frowned. He wasn't a particularly righteous person, and he wouldn't be willing to involve himself in some unnecessary trouble just because the other party was a woman, especially under the premise that he didn't know who was right and who was wrong. Zhu Maolin subconsciously looked at the woman hiding behind him in panic, and then he was startled. "It's you. This is the rookie model, Little Lu." "Ah, Manager Zhu." Little Lu looked overjoyed at this time, as if she had met a lifesaver. "Manager Zhu, help me. This guy's a bad guy. You're the worst one, okay?" Tai Setsu didn't know where to start complaining, But at least she was acting as herself, so she didn't have to laugh. Hey, brother, you'd better not meddle in other people's business. So Taisetsu's calm voice was neither salty nor light, but sounded like a knife. This woman owes us a lot of money, and she hasn't paid it back. You know what to do, right? Zhu Maolin frowned. Recently, he heard that many students, especially female students, would do some ridiculous things such as nude loans. The modeling circle was very messy, and the girls in the circle were both good and bad. Although he had the opportunity to work with Xiaolu once, he didn't have much contact with her after all. He didn't dare to conclude that she was hiding something under her pure and moving appearance. Since it is a monetary dispute, it is inconvenient for me to intervene. Zhu Maolin shook his head. Moreover, I am not familiar with you. Did you hear that? I am not interested in a bitch like you. Taisetsu snorted coldly. He walked forward and quickly reached out to grab little Lu's arm. He pulled her up forcefully, looked at Zhu Maolin, and said, Brother, if you have nothing to do, just leave. We don't want to cause trouble. Let go of me. What are you doing? Let go. Who allowed you to touch me? Let go of me. Little Lu screamed in horror at this time. Her face turned pale all of a sudden, and her whole body trembled. Looking at little Lu at this time, Taisetsu really felt that if he didn't know what was going on, he would really treat this girl as such. Sister 18, it's a waste that you don't win an Oscar with your acting skills. Let go of me. You don't have to act like this, right? Taisetsu frowned, but it seemed that Zhu Maolin had no intention of intervening at all. In other words, he wouldn't jump into this trick at all. Taisetsu had to sneer and said, if you want to blame someone, blame your gambling addict father who doesn't learn from his mistakes. The son has to pay his father's debt. Since your gambling addict father ran away, you must pay for it. Can you escape? Let go of me. Don't touch me. But Taisetsu didn't seem to hear it. He dragged her all the way. Let go of her. Zhu Maolin suddenly grabbed Taisetsu's arm at this time and said indifferently, Otherwise, I will call the police. Oh, you just said that you don't want to intervene. Do you want to cause trouble? Taisetsu sneered and stared at the other party. Brother, it's very simple for us to mess with you. Zhu Maolin said calmly. There are streets and alleys here. Even if it's not me, there will be people with a strong sense of justice who can't stand it. If she makes a fuss along the way, you will also be in trouble. Besides, if it's just a matter of money, why don't you use other methods? Taisetsu continued to sneer. Listening to you, are you going to help her pay back the money? Zhu Maolin shook his head. I don't have this plan. She can pay back the money by herself. She doesn't need others. Taisetsu was taken aback. He frowned and snorted coldly. If she can pay back the money, she won't run away when she sees us. This is simply reneging on the debt. Zhu Maolin said indifferently. Not now doesn't mean not in the future. You're just seeking money. You don't have to force people to this extent. She has the ability to make money. You're willing to give her time. I believe she also wants to pay back the money. It has nothing to do with you. But what's the benefit of forcing people to this extent? Brother, if you are too evil, you won't be able to survive. Taisetsu sneered twice. He suddenly pulled Zhu Maolin's collar forcefully and pulled him in front of him. Kid, you are quite courageous. You dare to talk to me like this? Zhu Maolin looked calmly facing Taisetsu's gaze. Taisetsu's gaze swept across Zhu Maolin's collar that he pulled open at this time. Under the neck, Taisetsu saw something. If he saw it correctly, this was a tattoo, a very big tattoo. It was not the kind of petty thing that young men and women would tattoo for each other. Generally speaking, this was something that only those who had been in the underworld would tattoo. It turns out that you're also in the underworld. Taisetsu said abruptly at this time. Zhu Maolin said indifferently, Let go. I don't want to cause trouble. I said that she has the ability to pay back the money. As long as you give her time, she can find a job and always pay it off. Don't force people into a dead end. This is not good for anyone. Taisetsu patted Zhu Maolin's chest hard twice. Okay, I will give you face this time, but it won't count. You should let her pay back the money. Otherwise, I won't care which underworld you are in. Okay, she has left. Zhu Maolin sighed. looked at Xiaolu and said, "You should go home too." He saw Xiaolu squatting on the ground at this time, shrinking her body. She still looked panicked. Zhu Maolin frowned and patted Xiaolu's shoulder. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Chapter 659. You will feel better after drinking some water. Later, Zhu Maolin brought little Lu back to the company. He took a cup of water from the tea and sent it to little Lu. The two were sitting in the office at this time. "Thank you." Little Lu nodded and reached out with both hands to hold the paper cup. This was warm water, and it didn't feel hot at all. In such a winter, there was no cold feeling. Because it was near the advertising company downstairs, Zhu Maolin simply suggested that little Lu come back here to rest if she didn't mind. Along the way, there was nothing more to say. Little Lu seemed to be a little stunned. Her lips were a little pale, and there was a lingering fear in her heart. She looked at Zhu Maolin. "That manager, don't you want to ask about me?" Zhu Maolin said calmly, "I said that I won't intervene too much in your affairs. I helped you today mostly because you shot a good film for me. So, your personal affairs are your personal affairs." Little Lu lowered her head and took a sip of warm water silently. She looked at the shaking water in the paper cup and said faintly, "I understand. It's the same for anyone who would want to get along with someone like me who was involved with those people. Everyone is more afraid of trouble. It's good that you know." Zhu Maolin nodded. Little Lu suddenly raised her head and said gratefully, But even so, I want to thank you today. Manager Zhu, if it weren't for you today, I really don't know what to do. She was so sad that she was about to cry. This should be a face that can particularly arouse a man's desire to protect. This kind of weak and helpless appearance doesn't seem to be fake. Zhu Maolin frowned. How should he put it? The shooting was completed a day ago. They were acquaintances, but he encountered such a thing the next day. Such a coincidence was a bit unbelievable for Zhu Maolin. The reason why he wanted to dissuade the man just now was that maybe there was such a coincidence. On the street, he doesn't dare to do anything to you. Zhu Maolin shook his head. "I just said that even if it's not me, there will be someone willing to help. Late or early. If there's nothing else, you can go back by yourself when you have enough rest. Think about how to face those people in the future. But I can make a suggestion. Most of these debt collectors are not good. You can choose to ask the police for help. It's useless, those people." Little Jade shook her head vigorously. "Have you tried it?" Zhu Maolin asked. Little Jade remained silent. Zhu Maolin suddenly said, "There is still something to eat in the refrigerator in the pantry. If you are hungry, heat it in the microwave. You can rest here for a while. Just be careful not to touch anything. I still have work to do." Without giving Xiaolu more room to talk, Zhu Maolin walked directly back to his office, leaving Xiaolu in the empty outer office. Because the customer's film was completed, the employees who finally didn't have to rush to work could leave early today. So when Zhu Maolin came back with Xiaolu, there was no one here. It was quiet. Only the faint sound of tapping on the keyboard could be heard from the manager's office. From the gap of the shutter curtain that was not closed tightly, little Lu could see that Zhu Maolin had obviously entered work mode, as if he had forgotten the passage of time. He really doesn't have any resentment. Little Jade frowned. Then, the ability of the past dream couldn't be activated. Perhaps, as Taisetsu said, her judgment of Zhu Maolin was too hasty. But if she modified the plan and thoroughly investigated all the information of the investor from now on, it was obviously not in line with her efficient work mode. In that case, she should use Xiaolu's identity to pierce the thick wall built by the other party's indifferent work. The warm water just now had become cold at this moment. It seemed that people's hearts were also becoming cold. Xiaolu opened the door of the office on this floor and walked out alone. At this time, Zhu Maolin heard the sound of the door closing outside. He looked up and found that there was no one in the outer office, so he continued to look at the screen without any expression. He didn't know how much time had passed. There was no one in the company, and it seemed that he would not stop unless there was a disturbance, until he once again heard movement from the office outside. Someone was knocking on the outer glass door. Zhu Maolin frowned. He walked out all the way and found that the person outside the glass door was little Lu, who had obviously left for some time. "Why are you back?" Zhu Maolin opened the door and asked in confusion. "Did you forget to take something?" Little Lou smiled slightly at this time. Manager, you are still working overtime. Are you hungry? You just helped me. At least let me repay you. Let me treat you to something to eat. Zhu Maolin was startled, but he saw little Lou take out a bowl of instant noodles from the convenience store bag in her hand at this time. He opened his mouth slightly. It was the first time he saw someone treat someone to this kind of thing as a reward. Zhu Maolin sneered. Little Lou said with a look of annoyance, Actually, I don't have much money on me. Moreover, I can't find anything delicious nearby because it's too late. Too late. Zhu Maolin subconsciously glanced at the time. It was almost 12 o'clock. In this area with office buildings, there was really nothing to eat. Again, it's this time again. But you can't underestimate it. Little Lou hurriedly said at this time. Even if it's instant noodles, as long as you put in a little effort, you can make it very delicious. Let me borrow the pantry. Little Lou took the bag, lowered her head, walked past Zhu Maolin, and walked quickly into the pantry. Zhu Maolin frowned and followed. Don't bother. He looked at little Lou. I said, even if I don't help, someone else will stand up for you. You don't have to do this. Very soon, little Jade turned around, her eyes full of hope. It's really very soon. This kind of uneasiness and guilt seemed to come from the heart. No, this was something that only came from the heart. Am I thinking too much? Zhu Maolin was silent for a while, then nodded. You will leave after eating, right? Little Jade nodded her head seriously. Then it's up to you. Zhu Maolin nodded. Little Lou began to fiddle with the instant noodles she bought with a smile. She took out the seasoning, poured hot water, and covered it tightly. Then, she put all the seasonings on the lid. Was it heating? Next, she took out the pickled mustard and sausages from the bag. She used the fruit knife found in the pantry to cut the pickled mustard into finer pieces. Then, she used the heated seasoning to stir the pickled mustard into a piece. Next, she continued to cut the sausages into thin slices. The plate was a glass plate used to hold fruit. After little Lou drained the water of the noodles that had been soaked, she mixed the sauce with the pickled mustard and seasoning into the noodles. Finally, she placed the ham slices on top. She held the finished noodles in front of Zhu Maolin with both hands, but she looked cautious. It's ready to eat. Why is it so troublesome? Zhu Maolin looked at little Lou's results and asked puzzledly. For him who pursued work efficiency and time, such behavior was really a waste of time. In fact, it tasted no different from mixing these things together. But little Lou clearly took out a bottle of orange juice and apple juice at this time, mixed them together, found some ice from the refrigerator, put it in, and sent it to Zhu Maolin. She smiled and said, This is what I learned when I worked in a restaurant in the past. Mixing these two brands together, the taste is very good. Of course, it's not as delicious as the freshly squeezed ones, but it's okay. You haven't answered my question yet. Little Lou lowered her gaze as if she couldn't face Zhu Maolin's gaze. She whispered, How should I say it? Sometimes I feel that even if I eat alone, I can't treat myself too badly. Even if it's very simple instant noodles, if I put in some effort to make it for myself, I will be happier. This is also called enjoying life. Really? Zhu Maolin nodded. There are also such people. In life, many people would think this way, which seemed normal. Actually, little Lou scratched her earlobe with some embarrassment at this moment. It's because I eat this kind of thing almost every day. If I don't change the method, I can't even eat it myself. Those words just now were too beautiful. I feel that I can't listen to it anymore. Is the taste okay? Zhu Maolin had already started eating. He didn't chew carefully, nor did he devour it. It was just a very efficient way of eating. He said calmly, There is nothing different about the taste. Little Lou smiled awkwardly. Zhu Maolin said coldly, But the appearance can add a few points. It's okay. Really, it seemed that it could be easily satisfied. It was just such a simple statement of approval. Zhu Maolin was startled. He had never encountered such a simple little model in the advertising circle. In particular, this was an idea that suddenly emerged in his heart. Why do you often eat this kind of thing? Zhu Maolin suddenly asked. It stands to reason that you can also take on a job, so you can eat. Didn't I settle the payment for you yesterday? Little Lou shook her head and silently cleaned up the garbage after fiddling with this bowl of instant noodles. Zhu Maolin didn't continue to ask. I'm done. He finally put down the plate. Okay, little Lu said quickly. After I wash these, I will leave immediately. Zhu Maolin nodded and returned to his office. Soon after, the lights in the pantry were turned off, and little Lu left quietly. Zhu Maolin didn't care. He worked for more than an hour like this. The physical fatigue was already reminding him that it was time to rest. It was time to go home. He sighed and cleaned up everything here. Before leaving, he subconsciously walked into the pantry, turned on the light, and took a look. This place was unusually clean. Even the floor seemed to be wiped clean. Maybe I think too much. He shook his head and left the company. She is probably asleep now, right? The headlights swept across the bus stop on the road. He found that there was still someone in front of the bus stop at this time. She ran around the bus stop in small steps, then jumped. Occasionally, she rubbed her hands and blew into her palms. Why are you still here? Zhu Maolin had to stop the car. He met the girl again. I'm waiting for a bus. There is no bus at this time. Zhu Maolin shook his head. Then, is there any other bus stop nearby? Little Lu asked quickly. I'm not familiar with this place. I can't find the way. There's only one nearby. Zhu Maolin shook his head. Why don't you call a taxi? I see. Little Lu nodded. I got it. Manager Zhu, you go back first. I'm fine. You see, the convenience store across the street is still open. Then you be careful. Zhu Maolin released the car's handbrake again and drove the car out. He looked at little Lu in the rearview mirror and found that she just rubbed her hands at this time and sat down. She didn't immediately take out the phone. She just sat there. He reversed the car back. It was too late. It was okay to not follow the rules a little. Manager Zhu, why are you back? Little Lu opened her eyes curiously and asked. It was winter. Her face was already a little pale. Zhu Maolin frowned and suddenly asked, Are you planning to wait here until early morning? Didn't I just ask you to call a taxi? I will call. I will call later. I can't stay here all night. Little Lu smiled and said, I'm not stupid. All right, then you can call again. Zhu Maolin nodded. Little Lu took out her phone, but she saw that Zhu Maolin didn't intend to leave. In the end, she had to say weakly, I'm sorry. I really intend to wait here because it won't take long, just a few hours. Then it's too expensive to take a taxi. The car door suddenly opened. Zhu Maolin said in a rather helpless tone, Get in the car. Where do you live? I will send you back. But hurry up. Don't waste time. Little Lu hesitated for a while before saying, Then you wait for a while. As she said, she hurriedly ran to the convenience store in front. After a while, she ran back breathlessly. Then she got into the car and sent a bottle of hot milk to Zhu Maolin. Manager, you drink this. It's not good to drink coffee and tea so late. But she didn't buy his share. Zhu Maolin guessed that she might be reluctant to buy his share. It was already cold when waiting for the taxi. Really? Are you short of a lot of money? Zhu Maolin asked abruptly. Little Lu lowered her head and didn't answer. You just need to send me to the night bus stop in front. You don't have to send me home. Oh. Zhu Maolin nodded. The car drove slowly. Soon after, Zhu Maolin said indifferently, The client also bought the film you shot, but shouldn't be broadcast in prime time. If the effect is good, I will recommend you to sign an exclusive contract with this company. Really? It was so quiet that only the friction of the wheels and the asphalt road on the road outside could be heard. At this time, a voice broke the silence. There was really such a girl, untainted by the mud. Zhu Maolin smiled slightly. On this road that he was used to late at night, it didn't seem to be as long as before. Chapter 660. The dark black SUV drove all the way to one of the urban villages in this city. This was the address little Lu gave to Zhu Maolin, with a gambling-addicted father in the family. And the girl herself was particularly thrifty. It didn't seem unreasonable that she would live in such a simple place. At this time, Zhu Maolin remembered an interesting thing. That was the bus stop clearly stated the time of the bus. In other words, whether there was a bus or not, as long as one took a look, one would know the approximate time. No one would really be stupid enough to wait in place. But when he found little Lu, what was she doing? She was trotting and jumping around the bus stop. She seemed to be doing some warm-up exercises. She probably really intended to spend the long night like this. In fact, before little Lou left the advertising company, she could have raised the difficult problem of not having a car. If not, she could also ask Zhu Maolin to borrow some money for a taxi. No one would mind the 100 or so yuan, but she chose the stupidest method. Such a girl came out of a fairy tale, right? The chaotic atmosphere in the advertising circle had long made Zhu Maolin's concept quietly change. Of course, this change might not be good, but it was obviously necessary for life. Therefore, when his mind had habitually used this method to think about a woman who approached him, little Lou's appearance seemed to bring some impact that was different from the past. Zhu Maolin also thought of another point of view. When men were young, they would look forward to and desire women who were more mature than them. But when we have matured, we prefer those who are ignorant of the world. Have you lived here since you were a child? The car slowly stopped downstairs of an old four-story building. The street lights were dim yellow. There was a feeling of insufficient power, or the bulbs were old. A few unknown little bugs were flying under the light at this time. Little Lou shook her head and answered Zhu Maolin's question. She quickly got out of the car, as if she didn't want to continue to add more trouble to Zhu Maolin. She apologized and felt guilty. Thank you this time. Zhu Maolin just shook his head and said calmly, just think of it as me accumulating my own resources. It's hard to find a good advertising model. She's good and has some talent. There should be more room for development in the future. Just think of it as me investing in a debt of gratitude. Little Lou was taken aback. Zhu Maolin's rhetoric was a little beyond her expectation. Whether it was as little Lou or something else, is this the so-called maturity after officially stepping into society for a long time? Little Lou looked at Zhu Maolin with a complicated expression. The so-called maturity? I believe you will mature in the future. Zhu Maolin smiled lightly, then poked his head out and looked at the old building above his head. Aren't you going up? Since we're here, I'm going to send you off. Little Jade hurriedly waved her hand and walked up the unguarded staircase. It was the kind of staircase where the lights were manually turned on and off. As for Zhu Maolin, he quietly drove away from this place. Tiantai Mountain returned to the dark old house. A pair of cold eyes hidden in a black robe finally watched Zhu Maolin leave this place completely. He doesn't seem to have any intentions, does he? Taisetsu's voice suddenly rang out. Number 18 suddenly turned around at this time, looked at Taisetsu, and said coldly, how is your practice of the illusion ability? Why do you suddenly ask this? Taisetsu asked subconsciously. Number 18 said indifferently, little Lou needs a very bastard father, and you just acted well. Big sister, you still plan to continue? Taisetsu said incredulously. He suddenly felt that this was not like a novice teaching him at all. It seemed that number 18 was inexplicably competing with him. He didn't believe that a black soul envoy who had lived for many years would use such a cumbersome and inefficient method. Isn't this too low? Do you have a problem? If that's the case, I will think of another way. Anyway, you have no obligation to listen to me. Number 18 said indifferently. Taisetsu shook his head. I don't mean that. As I said, I'm not a good person. I won't blindly resist some so-called methods. I'm thinking, why don't we thoroughly investigate everything about this investor? The more we know, the better we'll be able to make a better judgment, right? Taisetsu imagined that number 18 would definitely understand what he meant. As for why number 18 didn't take the initiative to mention this matter, it was probably because he spoke too beautifully at the beginning. At this time, he couldn't get off the stage, or he couldn't put down his face. Then, he would take the initiative to mention it. Number 18 looked at Taisetsu meaningfully and suddenly nodded. Okay, the work of collecting information is originally one of my duties. This time, I will leave everything behind Zhu Maolin to you. Just treat it as practice. Of course, I won't let you work for nothing. If this transaction can be completed, I will offer to give you part of the performance. So, isn't this a way out? Taisetsu smiled slightly and said indifferently, let's talk about this later. Then, I'll think about where to start the investigation. With that said, Taisetsu's body turned into mist. Number 18 was slightly startled. Obviously, He is just a newcomer who can't fly well. Now, he can turn into mist so skillfully. How much practice did he do behind my back? Her view of Taisetsu had quietly changed a little. She unexpectedly felt that Taisetsu was a black soul envoy who could get along with normally. But what's going on with this Zhu Maolin? Number 18 could clearly feel that this man was moved for a moment. However, it was just a moment, and he became impregnable again. If he really loved his wife deeply, such a situation could be explained. However, he and his wife were in that strange mode of getting along. As Taisetsu said, it really needed to be investigated in depth. Number 18 was silent for a while. She subconsciously looked at the dark night like a void and murmured, "Could it be that Master has foreseen this situation, so he deliberately approved this investor? If this is the case, then, is Master already peeping into the future?" At 3:30 in the early morning, Zhu Maolin finally returned to the community where his home was located. After dragging his tired body for a day, he washed up silently and went to bed with his clothes. When he closed his eyes, he suddenly heard a rustling sound. "Did I wake you up?" Zhu Maolin knew it was Ho Qinyuhan. "I haven't slept," Ho Qinyuhan said softly. After a long silence, Zhu Maolin said, "Then let's sleep." Unexpectedly, his wife didn't turn around. Instead, she let her body get closer. It was the warmth of her body that had been buried in the quilt for a long time. This warmth was completely different from the heat of just taking a shower. It was like using warm water at just the right temperature to gently cast a thin layer of gauze on the body. Zhu Maolin smelled the fragrance of his wife's shampoo. At the same time, his lips were kissed. Heavy breaths were exchanged between the two. He could instinctively respond to the other party's kiss without even thinking. There was no need to deliberately cooperate because he had already practiced it countless times. His wife's enthusiasm was somewhat beyond Zhu Maolin's imagination. It was like a magnesium strip that was ignited. The light and heat for a moment drove Ho Qinyuhan's mature body. She sat on Zhu Maolin's body passionately, but she bowed her body as if she was unwilling to leave the lips of the person who shared the bed with her. She unbuttoned her husband's pajamas one by one. Like a drizzle, she began to gently suck her husband's neck. The nimble tip of her tongue then began to wander to her husband's chest. In a small place, she used the tip of her tongue to swirl around again and again. Finally, as his wife, her palm became restless after all. Ho Qinyuhan's palm suddenly slipped into her husband's pajama pants. There was nothing indescribable because they were a legal and reasonable couple. This was a matter of human relations. They had long passed the so-called reserved age. But Zhu Maolin knew that his wife rarely had such active behavior, which made him feel a little at a loss. His wife's palm at this moment was as soft and flexible as when pinching clay in the pottery art classroom. The tactile feeling brought by the condom had connected the nerves in his body. But this was far from it. He had already felt that his clone had entered a warm and soft place in the next moment. The nimble tongue was licking the skin that represented the masculine vitality. Zhu Maolin didn't know how many lifetimes of hard work he had used to exchange for such a gentle place. In the end, he sighed and said softly with a bitter voice, "Let's sleep." Ho Qinyuhan suddenly quieted down. Her body seemed to have stiffened. Time also stopped at this moment. When time turned again, she rushed out of the quilt as his wife. She looked at Zhu Maolin with desperate eyes, then turned her head and walked into the bathroom. The sound of water splashing sounded. Zhu Maolin knew that these sounds existed to cover up another sound. But he couldn't find any position he could use to stop these covered sounds. Because of his incompetence. Yes, as a man who couldn't fulfill his obligations as a husband. But he didn't lose his function as a man. His function was still very normal at any time. However, he still couldn't have the slightest reaction when facing his wife. When Ho Qinyuhan finally walked out of the bathroom of the master bedroom, Zhu Maolin was no longer in this room. He was lying on the sofa in the living room outside. Who didn't sleep? Do you want to sleep? Ho Qinyuhan didn't even want to let herself think about this question. She even wanted to forget the source of all this pain. Ho Qinyuhan closed her eyes and the contents of the flower cards that she had opened naturally appeared in front of her eyes. These contents flashed in her memory again and again, and gradually became clear, including her love. She didn't know how this magical shop set the price. She just wondered if her love that was about to be broken really had such value. Ho Chin Yuhan didn't remember how long she and her husband's time was out of sync. It turned out that when the time difference was synchronized, as always, there was only pain. Across the door, a scream suddenly came from the room in the quiet living room. Zhu Maolin finally just covered his eyes with his arms. In the early morning, 4:02 a.m., early in the morning, the cemetery's morning hall welcomed a very young man with a scarf wrapped around half of his face. It was not a fixed festival of worship. Many people would choose to come to this cemetery at this time to worship. An old man who was in charge of cleaning here looked at the young man with a scarf curiously. He stopped in front of a memorial tablet and looked at one of them. "Excuse me, do you want to buy some sesame oil candles?" However, since someone had come, the old man wasn't surprised and decided to do business with this young man who didn't bring anything with him. "All right, give me some." Taisetsu nodded. The old man found that this young man seemed to be particularly pious. In the end, Taisetsu put a bunch of incense in front of a child's memorial tablet. Zhu Maoxing. This was the name of the deceased child. "Hey, little brother, who are you to this child? Why haven't I seen you before?" The old man looked at Taisetsu curiously at this time. The old man had always been managing here. Most people who came here remembered him, whether they were new to the cemetery or those who came a long time ago. But after thinking about it, this young man was indeed the first time he saw him. "I'm a friend of this child's parents," Taisetsu then said, and then suddenly asked, "Old man, have you seen this child's parents?" "His mother often comes here quietly alone, so I have a deep impression of her. That's why I have a very deep impression of him." The old man thought for a while and said, "But I don't have any impression of his father. I remember that he came here once when he first bought the location." "Why?" Taisetsu suddenly asked. The old man subconsciously said, "Probably because he feels guilty. After all, such a thing happened. I don't think anyone feels good. Speaking of it, I can only blame this child for being unlucky." "What do you mean?" Taisetsu asked. "This child seems to be locked in the car by his father and suffocated to death." Chapter 661. If it was such an accident, then it must have been reported on the news. No matter if it was on TV or in the newspaper. The memorial tablet in the cemetery had a clear time of death, which was a good time for Taisetsu to check. Oxygen inhaling sheep internet cafe. Taisetsu was sitting in a single seat in this internet cafe, searching for the information he wanted. "Sir, the green tea you ordered." The waiter was a little girl. After delivering a bottle of green tea, she quietly looked at the man with a scarf. She felt that he was completely different from the young people who came here to play games. "Is there anything else?" Taisetsu found that the waiter hadn't left yet, so he couldn't help but ask curiously. No. The waiter girl could only shake her head and leave. I can't resist this kind of young but very mature boy with a magnetic voice." Taisetsu looked at the little girl strangely. Even after she left, she still quietly hid in the distance and occasionally peeked at him. Could it be that my identity as a black soul messenger has been discovered? But that shouldn't be the case. At least from what 18 said, those who can see the uniqueness of a black soul messenger are definitely humans with extraordinary powers. And the waiter of this internet cafe, no matter how you look at it, she is just an ordinary girl. Maybe it's an illusion? Taisetsu shook his head and began to browse the information he was looking for. Retrieved from father car accident. Child suffocated to death. The time was 3 years ago. Taisetsu opened the web pages one by one and began to use all the information recorded on the web pages here, try to restore the accident 3 years ago as much as possible in his mind. On Friday night, 3 years ago, a man surnamed Zhu and his 3-year-old son were on their way home after eating dinner at his parents' house. On the way, Jihua Road, Shaoxing. I haven't fallen asleep yet. I just fell asleep after eating, so I'm going home so late. There's no traffic jam. How can there be a car so late at night? It's very empty. Shaoxing. He's playing at the back. Aya, Xiaoxing, don't grab my hair. Okay, let's not talk about it. I'll be home soon. The child's proud prank voice. But as a father, he would not be angry at such a small prank. No matter if it was him or her, as a husband, as long as this child could always maintain a smile on his face, no matter how many pranks he pulled. As long as the child had hope for life, as long as the child didn't realize the difficulties of this society and life, as long as the child didn't realize that he was different from others. Dad, when can I learn to walk? Yes, as long as you practice every day, little Xing, it will be very fast. But if you slack off that day, it will take a very long time. This child was born unable to walk. He was a handicapped child. But even so, he and his wife never gave up. This was because the couple firmly believed that no matter what kind of life it was, whether it was perfect or flawed, when this little life was born in this world, it was already a great miracle. Their children's flaws would only make them, as parents, give them more love and care. It's going to take a long time. The child lowered his head. When you can walk, Dad will take you to fly a kite and go fishing by the sea, okay? Little Xing quickly raised his head and said coquettishly, I want to eat pudding. You forgot that you can't eat supper? It's not good for your health. I want to eat. Little Xing bit his finger and said, Dad, can you buy it for me? Okay, but don't tell your mother when you go back. He turned back and parked the car in a parking space on the side of the road, next to a convenience store. Come on, pinky promise. The father took the child's little finger and closed the door. The child who couldn't walk could only stay in the car. It didn't take much time to buy a pudding. He soon walked out of the convenience store. When he was still waiting for the red light, he saw his car across the road. In fact, he bought 2 puddings. He would eat them with his son later. It was also a very precious memory for the father and son to eat together without telling their mother. It belonged to the childhood memory between the father and son. In the future, they could reminisce about it together, right? After turning the green light, he took a step forward. Something was stinging his eyes. It was extremely bright light. A red sports car was roaring like a galloping beast at this moment. Boom! Little Xing, manager. In the morning, at the advertising company's routine morning meeting, Tboy called Zhu Maolin in surprise. In front of the projection in the conference room, the colleague who was making a report also looked nervously at the department manager, who had been working very hard all the time. Everyone found that Manager Zhu was holding his chin with his hand at this time. He was silent, and his face was frighteningly gloomy. Everyone was a little uneasy. They didn't know if the manager was dissatisfied with the report. Although Zhu Maolin wouldn't scold people directly, the manager's questioning could make people feel uncomfortable and doubt their life. What? Zhu Maolin was startled at this time. He looked at Tboy in confusion. What did you just say? Sorry, I remembered something, so I didn't pay attention. Manager Zhu Maolin was absent-minded in the meeting and apologized to everyone. This was a rare occurrence. For those who had only been employed for more than a year, it could even be said to be a miracle. Oh, it's nothing. It's just little Zhang's report. Tboy was an old man who had followed Zhu Maolin. When he could say something, he could only bite the bullet and say something. Okay, I will read this report again later. If there is a problem, I will know how to find it. Zhu Maolin nodded, then stood up. I'm sorry, I didn't rest well last night. Let's end today's morning meeting here. Amy, help me make up a leave request form later. I'll take a leave today. After speaking, Zhu Maolin picked up the things in his hand and directly left the conference room. In the conference room, everyone looked at each other as if they were looking at a monster. They began to whisper, This manager is completely abnormal today. Could it be that this is the precursor of a storm? It shouldn't be, right? I think maybe he really didn't have a good rest. Didn't you notice that the manager's eyes are bloodshot today? Does he not sleep a lot every day? This workaholic must have no sex life. Stop talking. The manager hasn't gone out yet. Let's get back to work. Later, after the father was sent to the hospital, he quickly woke up. His life was not in danger. However, the child was accidentally suffocated to death in the car. The driver who caused the accident has been arrested, but he can't make up for this tragedy. Cherish your life and stay away from drunk driving. Don't create a family tragedy because of the excitement you were pursuing for a while. So many tragedies happen around you and me every day. Isn't it enough to sound the alarm for you and me? Contributor, Run Xiling. Rin Xiling? After Taisetsu read this report, he was stunned. Where did I hear this name? But he was just curious, and he quickly thought about Zhu Maoling's matter. This is the crux of the problem between the husband and wife. Taisetsu nodded and raised his hand. Excuse me, the bill. The car stopped in front of the entrance of the cemetery. Zhu Maolin hesitated for a moment, but he finally stepped into the gate of the cemetery entrance and came to the mourning hall. Unexpectedly, he saw a familiar figure here, standing in front of the memorial tablet that he didn't want to face. Maybe it has been a long time. She is here too. Sure enough, it's because of what happened last night. And I'm here too, because I remember again. When she turned around, she saw Zhu Maolin standing behind her. At the moment when their eyes met, Hao Chen Yuhan's body trembled slightly, and then their gazes quickly separated. Zhu Maolin just nodded, walked past his wife, and put an incense stick in front of the memorial tablet. Hao Chen Yuhan suddenly whispered, Little Xing should be very happy that you are here. This was the second time he came here. He really came here, even if he knew it was this place. Zhu Maolin, who was lighting the incense with a lighter, was stunned all of a sudden. It wasn't until the flame burned his fingers that he reacted. He subconsciously glanced at the photo on the memorial tablet. The black and white photo in front of the memorial tablet was the child's most perfect and happy smile. Chapter 662. Zhu Maolin later told Hao Chen Yuhan to take a walk outside. He took a leave of absence to come here today. He brought 2 bottles of water over and handed one to Hao Chen Yuhan. He was as polite as when he was at home. He was even more polite than when he first met her. It was just that there was no rush of excitement. Hao Chen Yuhan seemed to know why her husband, who never came, would appear in this place today. Hao Chen Yuhan remained silent along the way. No matter what topic was used as a starting point, it would eventually turn into a cold situation. It was better not to say anything. They could still have some tacit understanding after getting along for a long time. Yes, there might still be such a tacit understanding. How about, you say it first? You say it first. Then, then he looked away and continued to walk on this road. It seemed that no one had the courage to say the how about in the future. It was just that Zhu Maolin still felt a deeper level of guilt. He stopped, and Hao Chen Yuhan subconsciously took a few steps forward. This time, it was his time that stopped, and her time was flowing. He looked at her back and finally chose to stop his time more completely, and then let her time flow more completely. Let's get a divorce. Hao Chen Yuhan's body trembled slightly. She didn't stop or look back as if she didn't hear it. She just walked forward. In the end, there was no response, and she disappeared from the cemetery. Zhu Maolin stared blankly at the place where she disappeared. He said silently in his heart, You are still young after all. How can I deprive her of her rights as a woman, even if it is love? Soon after, Zhu Maolin also left the cemetery. He didn't go back to the company, and he was even more reluctant to go back to his home. He drove alone, circling the road aimlessly. Even when he finally said this sentence, he didn't feel relieved at all. It was a cloudy day with no wind. The cloudy and windless weather seemed a little dull, especially in winter. It gave people a very bad feeling. Probably, something was pressing her heart. She just stared blankly at the grayish-black sky. Greedy Wolf still didn't respond. When it woke up today, the first thing it did was to call out, but there was still no response. Sure enough, it was because she was too heavily injured. Of course, it was also because of the death of the 2 wolf warriors. She was unwilling to absorb too much vitality from the other 2 wolf warriors who were sacrificed, resulting in her being unable to unleash the power of the greedy wolf, resulting in such a situation. The monster who claimed to be Zhuefeng was hiding at the side, quietly looking at her. When she woke up, the first thing she saw was the little monster who had picked her up. After putting down a set of clothes, as if he was frightened, he immediately hid and peeked. This guy should be less than 50 years old. Her hands were too heavy. She could only vaguely tell that this child's demonic power was not strong. But for some reason, there was a strange sense of closeness. Why would such an ordinary little coyote monster give her such a weird feeling? Come here, don't hide. She shook her head and shouted at the spot where Juefeng was hiding. After a while, Juefeng walked out stiffly. This kind of stiff movement was like a large amount of glue stuck to his body. She smiled subconsciously. Because of the injury, she could not completely maintain her human form. She smiled with dimples. My name is Zixing. After all, he was her savior. There was no reason for her not to say her name out loud to Juefeng. Miss Zixing. Hi, hello. I am Juefeng. Juefeng straightened his chest and clasped his hands together like a soldier standing guard, but his eyes drifted to the distant sky. He did not dare to face Zixing in front of him. Haven't you introduced yourself before? Zixing smiled. This Juefeng's appearance reminded her of the children who had always admired her on the plateau. They were also so reserved, afraid that they would miss her sight if they did not perform well. Is that so? Juefeng scratched his head awkwardly. If it were just a female monster, he obviously had a lot of contact with her. Not to mention others, Nini, who often played with him, was a cat demon. Although Nini was obviously very clingy to cheese, Juefeng did not seem to be so reserved when he played with Nini. His heart could not help but beat faster, and he could not help but look at the other party's pale cherry lips and purple pupils. Have you lived in this city for a long time? Zixing looked at Juefeng and felt that this child was still too nervous. Where are your parents? Why do you live in such a place alone? My parents are gone. Juefeng's nervous state suddenly disappeared, and he looked a little lonely. After the loneliness, he quickly cheered up and wiped his nose. But I have a group of very good friends. They are all my family, and they are worthy of my life to protect. That's great. Zixing looked at Juefeng yearningly. What about you? What about your family? Juefeng simply sat cross-legged on the ground and looked up at Zixing sitting on the simple wooden bed in front of him. Me? Zixing said softly, I don't have parents, but I have an elder brother. Elder brother. Juefeng didn't know what this feeling of having a brother or sister was, but it should be the same feeling as cheese. He felt that maybe it was not much worse than a real brother. Zixing covered her chest at this time and coughed a few times. Juefeng quickly stood up. Do you know Lord Long? I don't think your injury will recover in a short time. Why don't I send you to Lord Long? He will definitely be able to cure you. However, Lord Long doesn't seem to be here recently. But don't worry, now there is little Long. She is Lord Turtle's disciple. Her medical skills should be very good. Zixing didn't know who little Long was, but she looked at Juefeng and frowned. Are you familiar with that lord? The kind of big shot who ruled over the monster race. And this most ordinary little coyote? Not really. Juefeng scratched his head and said, in fact, Lord Long is very good to us, especially those like us who haven't fully matured yet. It's all the same. And usually, everyone likes to go to Lord Long's hospital. Even if it's not to see a doctor, we will chat for a while. In fact, Lord Long is very good, but he has a sharp tongue. And occasionally, he has some bad interests, right? Is that so? Zixing nodded. She had never seen this Lord Dragon God of the monster race. Living on the plateau, in such a bitter and cold place, there were very few monsters who were willing to come to Kelowna. She had never seen him, but she had heard his name. For Zixing, this Lord Dragon God was always very colorful, but she didn't expect to hear Juefeng say this. Perhaps he was an approachable lord. How is it? Juefeng asked. I didn't know about you before, so I didn't dare to take you there. I was afraid that something would happen. But now, there should be no problem. Zixing looked at Juefeng and said coldly, Then, aren't you afraid that I'm a very bad monster? Juefeng was taken aback, then said seriously, I know why. I always feel that you won't hurt me, and can't hurt me. So, there shouldn't be a problem. It's natural that I won't hurt you. After all, you saved my life, but can't hurt me? Zixing was a little amused. Sure enough, it was because the injury was too serious that this little monster felt that she was also a little monster. Thank you for your kindness. Zixing shook her head. If it's just this kind of injury, I can recover by myself. Don't bother that lord. Is that so? Juefeng was slightly disappointed, then said, Then, is there anything I can help you with? Zixing thought for a while and suddenly said, "In that case, can you help me find some medicinal materials? Ordinary Chinese medicine shops should be able to find them, as long as they are not fake." "No problem." Zhui Feng patted his chest and stood up. "I'll go now." With that said, he jumped onto the railing of the rooftop at once. Seeing that he was about to leave this place, Zixing quickly shouted at this time, "Wait, I haven't told you what medicinal materials I need." "Ah." Zhui Feng was taken aback. Then he stepped off the rooftop and fell down to the ground. Zixing subconsciously got up worriedly, but she saw Zhui Feng holding the railing with one hand, then crawling back with a scared look on his face. He kept saying that it was a close call. Zixing covered her mouth and laughed softly, thinking that this little monster was really funny. So beautiful, Zhui Feng was mesmerized. It was a cloudy day, and there was no wind, but it was not bad. Chapter 663. Chuan Xiong, Safflower, Rosemary. Zhui Feng lowered his head and read the names of the medicinal materials that Zixing wrote for him in front of the old master of the Chinese medicine shop. Of course, it was impossible for him to know what the effects of these medicinal materials were, but Zixing should be very familiar with medicine since she could write these medicinal materials by herself. Soon after, he left the Chinese medicine shop and rushed to another place, a river bank in the Riverside Park. This was what Zixing asked him to do. She asked him to go there and see the situation. Maybe he would meet a few of her friends, using this as a token of recognition. Zhui Feng looked at the double-fish jade pendant that Zixing gave him in his hand, and suddenly he was a little distracted. This is what Zixing has been keeping on her. Although it has been in my hand for a while, it still seems to have Zixing's body temperature. It seems to carry her scent. The car in front of the road sped by and suddenly honked its horn, waking Zhui Feng up from this state of absent-mindedness. He shook his head vigorously, then hurried towards the Riverside Park. In a long-abandoned wooden house in the bamboo forest, Nero, who had fallen directly on the ground since she opened the door, opened her eyes abruptly and then sat up directly. She moved her neck, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Nero habitually took out a piece of gum and put it in her mouth. After chewing it, she looked at the time on her mobile phone. She was in a coma for a whole day and night. Fortunately, there's a boss who can send me back here otherwise. Nero got up and continued to move her muscles and bones. If she was not in this place, but directly in a coma outside, for a person like her, it could be said that she had no sense of security at all. Even if it was a club with a higher actual safety factor, it would be fine. Even if that place was safe, it could not give people any sense of security. Nero put Yamado on a small wooden table in the wooden house at this time, then pushed open the door of the living room and walked into the quiet room inside. Her parents lived in seclusion in this place, and she was also born in this place. At least now, she could still remember some bits and pieces of this place. Nero, who had to force herself to be optimistic, lowered her head and smiled. In general, she had a relatively complete childhood. In the quiet room, Nero sat directly on the ground and then took out a few things. One was the box he obtained from the club to preserve the quality of souls, and the other was used to chase after the mutated Prometheus Iron Whistle. On the way to trace Iron Whistle, Nero encountered the Greedy Wolf clan from the plateau. At this moment, beside this small compass was the so-called secret treasure from the Greedy Wolf clan. It was a dark bead, but it didn't seem to be made of jade. When he held it in his hand, there was no reaction. However, the Greedy Wolf clan valued it so much. It probably needed some special method of the Greedy Wolf clan to activate it. Speaking of which, since she had already obtained this thing, if she used it as the transaction fee, would the boss accept it? She seemed to be thinking of something strange again, and her eyes narrowed. Soon after, Nero found some ingredients from around the bamboo forest and then cooked a very simple dinner here alone. At night, Nero closed the door and hummed a song. Finally, she whispered to the empty cabin, "I'm going out." If it was in the past, she might have added, "Dad, Mom, I'm going out." If it was in the past, she traveled day and night, but in the end, she still left this place. Zhui Feng quickly strolled around the riverbank of the Riverside Park, and then quickly rushed back to his house on the rooftop of the building. In these 2 days, he didn't even contact Cheese, Nini, and the others because he didn't want to reveal the matter of Purple Star. He didn't mean to hide it deliberately, but he felt that the fewer people who knew about Purple Star, the better. This was the vigilance he had developed when he was wandering. Using the simple tools here, he boiled these medicinal materials into medicine. After drinking it, although he couldn't get out of bed immediately, his complexion seemed to be better. Looking at Purple Star meditating, the aura around her began to converge on her body. Zhuefeng couldn't help but feel a little envious. In this situation, Purple Star should have some special cultivation method. For the current monsters in the monster clan, because of the decline, many monsters were unable to use the high-efficiency cultivation methods of ancient times. Most of them were some shallow breathing methods. Some could only rely on instinct to absorb the aura of the natural world. For example, Zhuefeng himself used the shallow breathing method that he comprehended himself. As for Purple Star's extremely efficient technique, it was probably something that only the ancient monster clan with an inheritance could possess, right? Or it could have a very powerful elder or something like that. Although he had a very powerful power before, that power disappeared after the boss took away the demon wolf soul in his body. Now, he was still as ordinary as before. For a noble monster like Purple Star, she probably wouldn't have any special feelings when looking at the most ordinary little ground wolf like him, right? Is there anything on my face? Purple Star suddenly opened her eyes and found that Zhuefeng had been staring at her at this time. She asked disrespectfully. No. Zhuefeng waved his hand in a hurry. I just saw that you absorbed the aura very quickly. Very, very powerful. Purple Star smiled slightly, then her heart moved. She said softly, Zhuefeng, let me see you absorb the aura once. Now. Zhuefeng was taken aback. Can I? Purple Star asked in a low voice. No. Zhuefeng shook his head quickly, then sat up straight, but he said a little awkwardly, but my efficiency is very poor. I'm afraid you will see me as a joke. With that said, Zhuefeng no longer pretended and closed his eyes. In fact, it was best to choose the time at night to absorb the aura. Now that it was daytime, the effect that was originally not satisfactory could only be described as unbearable. Purple Star watched silently, feeling the changes in the concentration of the aura that would be adhered to by Zhuefeng. Finally, she said slowly, Zhuefeng, listen, I will only say it once. How much you can remember is your own business. Just treat it as a thank you gift for saving me. This is a very good method of my clan. I hope it can be of some help to you. Some paragraphs that were difficult for Zhuefeng to understand seemed to be engraved in his mind. Even if these were words that he could not understand, for some reason, when Purple Star was dictating this method, the aura that was originally slow seemed to become active all of a sudden. His body, as if it was not under his own control, had naturally undergone some sort of change, and this change was indeed not visible from the outside. With Purple Star's reading, Zhuefeng gradually entered a state of forgetfulness. Looking at the changes in the flow of the aura, after reading the method, Purple Star's eyes lit up subconsciously. Of course, she could not reveal the important method of the Greedy Wolf clan casually, but after all, he had saved her life. So this was the best method that she could take out. In fact, it could be regarded as a simplified version of a certain great technique in the inheritance of the Greedy Wolf clan. If it was placed in the outside demon world, it would be something that many wild demons would fight for. I didn't expect that just an ordinary Aardwolf bloodline would have such a good perception. Purple Star's surprise gradually became stronger, but in the end, she had to sigh. It's a pity that such a perception, if it weren't for this little Aardwolf bloodline. But how could it change? Chapter 664. If someone had told Lu Zixing a few days ago that he would lose everything and be betrayed by his friends and family, he would not have believed it no matter what they said. However, the development of the facts told him that this had become a sign. The Lu family's property no longer belonged to him, and there was no place for him in the company. His mother, Mrs. Lu, was even so heartless that she asked the company's security to drive him away. But even so, Lu Zixing didn't despair in the desperate situation. At least, he got a huge sum of money from Professor Trevor. He thought that at least he still had this wealth, so he wouldn't let his life be too bad. He thought that perhaps after some time, his mother would still care about him as a son. It's just because she was too disappointed in him. So, she wanted to teach him a profound lesson. It must be like this. When he had suffered enough, his mother would definitely forgive him. Just like in the past, no matter how many wrong things he did, he could always be forgiven. Why can't it be because of me? His mother only had one son. It must be like this. Sorry, sir. The money on this check can't be cashed. But in the bank's VIP room, the bank manager told Lu Zixing a cruel reality that directly broke all his fantasies. Mr. Lu, the account on this check has been frozen, so you can't transfer any money. I'm really sorry. The news that he was kicked out of the company and even the Lu family's mansion had not been completely spread outside. At least in the eyes of the bank manager, this gentleman was still a VIP user of the bank. Frozen? How can it be frozen? This is impossible. When I received it, I clearly checked it. There is no problem with this account. Lu Zixing asked hurriedly, like a drowning person who lost his life-saving straw. The bank manager had to frown and say, this account seems to have been frozen by a foreign court. I think the owner of this account may have committed something. I'm sorry, Mr. Lu. I really don't know more things. After all, this is a foreign account. Why don't you go to the owner of this account and ask clearly? Lu Zixing left the bank in a daze. He frantically dialed Professor Trevor's phone along the way, but this number no longer existed. He couldn't find this foreign old man again. He couldn't go back to the Lu family's mansion. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? At the entrance of the bank, he suddenly felt that everything in front of him had turned pitch black. It was as if he was in a distorted mirror world. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Lu Zixing suddenly felt something touch his body, and with this collision, his arm was directly grabbed by someone. You? What do you want to do? Young Master Lu, come with us. Let me go. He struggled and even tried to scream, but his nose was quickly covered by a handkerchief that emitted a strange smell. Then he lost consciousness. When Lu Zixing woke up, in fact, he was woken up by someone splashing cold water on him. He was in a cage that was less than 1 meter high. At most, it was only 80 centimeters high. There were such cages all around. Pairs of ferocious eyes were staring at him at the same time. They were actually vicious dogs with sharp teeth. He was locked in a dog cage. And this was a kennel. Young Master Lu, do you like this place? In front of the cage, a bald man squatted down and patted the pillar of the dog cage with his palm, making a thumping sound. This is something specially prepared for you. Black. Brother Black Panther, let's talk nicely. Let me out first. Lu Zixing begged. He knew who this person was. He was one of the thugs of the underground casino owner whom he owed a debt. These days, because of his family's affairs, Lu Zixing completely forgot that he still owed a huge amount of gambling money to this casino. Young Master Lu, the time we agreed on last time has long passed. Shouldn't you return the money you promised us? Give me a little more time. I will definitely be able to get it. Brother Black Panther, let me out first. It's uncomfortable here. He was almost 8 meters tall, yet he was locked in such a narrow dog cage. It was already very uncomfortable for him. He didn't even know how long he had been in there before he woke up. The blood in his body had long been blocked. It was even more uncomfortable. Not to mention, he was treated like a dog in such a place. Our boss is already tolerant enough. Brother Black Panther snorted coldly at this time. He raised his leg and kicked the dog cage. This kick was extremely powerful and made a loud noise. It immediately alarmed the vicious dogs that were locked around. These frightened, vicious dogs roared crazily at this time. The sound was chaotic, but it was like a soul-stirring bell. Lu Zixing was so scared that his face suddenly turned pale and his body trembled. He was so scared that he had to cover his ears with both hands. When Brother Black Panther hit his palm, these vicious dogs stopped roaring and squatted down, but they still stared at Lu Zixing one by one. Young Master Lu, I don't want to trouble you. As long as you return the money, I will let someone send you out respectfully. I don't have it now. Lu Zixing didn't even dare to look at the bald macho man's eyes. Young Master Lu, You have such a big company, and you have inherited so much from your father. If you say that you don't have it, wouldn't it be a big joke? Brother Black Panther sneered and said, could it be that you, young Master Lu, actually have some special hobby that you like to be locked in a dog cage? No problem. I will let these little beasts entertain you. I promise to make you comfortable. Don't be like this, Brother Black Panther. I'm serious. I really don't have money. Lu Zixing said painfully. Give me the phone. Brother Black Panther snorted coldly and called the underling outside the door to get the phone. He connected in front of Lu Zixing. The bald Brother Black Panther looked at Lu Zixing. After the phone was connected, he said without saying anything, is this the Lu family's mansion? Who am I? Who are you? Ah, Mrs. Lu, nice to meet you. It's like this. He was calling the Lu family. Lu Zixing immediately recognized the voice of his mother, Mrs. Lu, from the faint voice coming from the phone. Lu Zixing watched all of this happen in horror. Would his mother save him? His heart pounded, and his breathing became rapid. Brother Black Panther even deliberately turned on the hands-free mode at this time. Lu Zixing, I don't have this son. We have already cut off our relationship. Listen carefully. I don't care who you are, and I don't care if he is in your hands now. I don't care if you want to cut off his ears or cut off his fingers. Even if you chop him up and feed him to the dogs, it has nothing to do with me. But if you have the courage to find trouble with my family, I am not a pushover. Mother, is this you? Is this your voice? Is it really? Lu Zixing's whole body became cold and trembled. The phone was hung up instantly. Brother Black Panther narrowed his eyes at this time. His eyes were full of murderous intent. He stared at Lu Zixing without saying a word. Big brother, his mother seems to be telling the truth. Could it be that they have really severed their relationship? Cut off. Brother Black Panther sneered. You are a bastard, right? When you go home, even if your mother scolds desperately, will she leave you in the lurch? The underling shrugged, indicating that she would not. Brother Black Panther snorted coldly at this time. I don't want there to be anyone in the world who will leave their son in the lurch. Cut off one of this guy's ears and send it to his home. I want to see if she can be indifferent. Okay. The underling was obviously familiar with it. Brother Black Panther walked out like this, and then two people walked in. One of them was holding a utility knife in his hand. The sharp blade was pushed out in front of Lu Zixing and slowly approached him. You, don't come over. No. The shrill scream, once again, made the evil dogs in the dog house cheer in unison. After these underlings put on the bloody ear, they gave Lu Zixing a simple treatment to stop the bleeding, then they left the room. They turned off the incandescent light here, but they turned on another dark red light. It seemed that the air was also sticky with thick blood, and the dogs kept barking. Lu Zixing had already collapsed in horror. All his rationality had collapsed. The pain from the ear wound, the fear of the surrounding environment, and the despair in his heart made him finally take out the thing that was hidden close to his body. It was a black card. The sight in front of him suddenly changed. It became relaxed in an instant, and he came to a quiet and comfortable environment. This and the horrible doghouse where he was trapped were simply a contrast between hell and heaven. Here, it seemed to be heaven. The boss in front of him, who he had seen once, stood up at this time and slowly bowed to him. The respectful appearance made Lu Zixing feel that he was still the young master of the Lu family. He was treated as he should when he went in and out of various places. We meet again, Mr. Lu. Boss Luo said softly at this time. I don't know what you want to buy this time. Save. Lu Zixing just opened his mouth, then he immediately stopped talking. It can't be that simple. This time I must think carefully, think clearly about how to take back everything I lost. Then, can I win the opportunity to take back everything from this mysterious place? I don't know, but if I don't do it, there will definitely be no chance. So, let's gamble. The last gamble. Chapter 665. Gambling was also a game of chess. The fruits of victory that came with risks were always more delicious than one would expect. Boss Luo liked to meet all kinds of guests. For example, the guest who proposed to gamble with him, Lu Zixing. The three generations of the Lu family, father and son, also sold their family here. It was like a reincarnation spell. But Lu Zixing's wish to gamble at this moment seemed to be a little different. Whether it was good or bad, it was always different. This was probably the reason why people were called humans. Is it not possible? Lu Zixing looked at the club's boss with some uneasiness at this time. It seems to be okay to buy things, but if I propose to gamble, does the other party intend to refuse? How can it be? Luochio smiled slightly. No matter what kind of goods it is, it's fine. It's just that the definition of gambling is too broad. I hope you can be more specific. In this case, it will be convenient for the shop to quote for you. Sure enough, Lu Zixing's eyes suddenly lit up. Even though he looked so pathetic at the moment, he came to this place, and although he could no longer feel the pain of having his ear cut off, looking from the outside, he did indeed look extremely pathetic. However, at this moment, he seemed to be rejuvenated with a brand new vitality. It was the appearance of a drowning person when he saw a piece of driftwood. The hope for life was always the best decoration in this club rendered by soft candlelight. Luochio waved his hand and asked Yi to invite Lu Zixing to sit down and serve him black tea. Then, he said calmly, "Tell me, I want you to gamble with me." Lu Zixing's brain turned quickly, but I need an absolutely fair gamble. No matter what kind of item the gamble is, it must be absolutely fair. That is to say, you can't use your mysterious and strange power to cheat. Okay, Luochio nodded, no matter what kind of request the guest made. Seeing that the boss agreed directly, Lu Zixing was not ecstatic. Instead, he calmed down further because he was very clear about one thing. That was, even if he was so fanatical at the moment, he was still a few levels behind the other party in terms of confidence. As a fanatical gambler, Lu Zixing didn't feel a bit of a gambler from this boss at all. It could even be said that this was a person who never gambled, but he agreed directly. He didn't care. He didn't care whether he won or lost, because this boss had an extremely terrifying capital. Such an opponent was the most terrifying. In addition, regarding the chips of both parties, Lu Zixing looked at Luochio, took a deep breath, and said seriously, "I hope that in your chips, you can include the kinship that I have already sold. What are you going to use to pay for the bet with me? I'm worried that you won't be able to reach the specified amount of chips." However, Boss Luo said, "Everything requires a sufficient price, but I can guarantee that there will be a new kinship as a bargaining chip." The kinship that Lu Zixing used to pay had long been thrown to the altar by Luochio. Of course, he could use his own life to buy it back from the altar, but as the boss, he was undoubtedly losing money. Boss Luo, who liked to go to the supermarket on discount days, obviously did not intend to violate his principles of housekeeping. That's fine. Lu Zixing nodded. He knew that he couldn't ask for more. After all, he was already in a desperate situation in his life. At this moment, as long as he could fight for a glimmer of hope, he couldn't ask for too much. "I've decided." He looked at Luochio and said heavily, "Use my soul in exchange for a fair bet with you." "Are you sure?" Luochio said calmly. "I'm sure." Lu Zixing gritted his teeth. Luochio nodded and said softly, "So, what do you plan to use as your chip? Let me make it clear that even if it is a fair bet, it is just a bet. The store still won't accept the money in the world as a chip. You don't have to worry. I don't have money at all now." Lu Zixing smiled bitterly, and then his face was full of ruthlessness. "My bet is my life, the time I can live. All the time I exist, seconds, years, days, and months. This is my chip." "Okay." Luochio nodded. "So, when do you plan to start, and then, what do you want to bet? Let's do it now." Lu Zixing glanced at the maid next to him. Although she was flawless and beautiful, in the eyes of gamblers, such a beautiful thing couldn't even compare to a chip on the gambling table. So he said directly, "Give me a coin." Yi simply took the most ordinary coin and gave it to Lu Zixing. He picked up the coin and observed it carefully for a while before asking, "How much do I have to bet?" Boss Luo said calmly, "Customer, the money you owe to the casino can't be repaid. But the casino won't really take your life because it's tantamount to nothing for the casino. But they will maximize the value of you. After that, you will be sold to be a coolie. Well, 40 years later, you will finally die of illness because of overwork. So you have 40 years of gambling money." This is my future? 40 years. Lu Zixing's face changed dramatically. Suddenly hearing his miserable future, he was extremely scared from the bottom of his heart. Because this place was omnipotent, he didn't even have to doubt the authenticity of the boss' words. I thought you didn't have the courage to commit suicide, the boss said calmly. Lu Zixing moved his lips, but he didn't say anything. But Lu Zixing's eyes suddenly lit up at this time, and he suddenly smiled. Under this huge pressure, his thinking speed unexpectedly increased greatly. It seems that before I start, I have something to earn, Boss Luo said calmly. Why do you think so? Lu Zixing said seriously, my future. This time I didn't pay any price, and I know my future, right? If it's under normal circumstances, I'm afraid I have to pay an extremely huge price to foresee my future, right? But now, because you have to calculate the gambling money for me, you have to tell me this. Customer is really smart. Miss Maid added another cup of hot tea to Lu Zixing at this time and praised him softly. Boss Luo didn't comment. He held the cup and took a sip, then said, So, customer, are you going to use the coin toss method? Lu Zixing deliberated at this time and said carefully, If I want to leave safely from Black Panther's hands, how much do I need to bet? Customer, can you be more specific? Do you want to end this matter completely? Or just to be able to leave, and no matter what happens after that? Luochio said calmly. The latter. Lu Zixing said quickly. Obviously, the former required more bets. In this case, please bet 10 days of your life as a chip, Luochio said with a chuckle. Lu Zixing nodded, then directly stretched out his palm in front of Luochio, revealing the coin sent by the maid. Then I'll toss. I choose the male side. Word. Luochio smiled. And then when Lu Zixing was about to throw, he said coldly, Customer, what you said is absolute fairness. Then, it also means that you also need to maintain fairness. Lu Zixing's face changed slightly. His hand that was about to throw the coin slowed down. Then he picked up the coin with his thumb. The silver 1 yuan coin spun rapidly in the air, making a buzzing sound. The two sides that spun rapidly seemed to turn into one black and one white. One side was him, and the other side was the boss. One side was like hell, and the other side was heaven that represented life. When the potential energy of the coin was finally exhausted and began to fall, Lu Zixing's eyes still couldn't move away from it. He subconsciously intended to reach out and catch his fate. He had already held his breath for a long time, and his head was full of sweat. Finally, the coin fell in the back of his hand. Lu Zixing swallowed a mouthful of saliva subconsciously. His palm trembled and slowly moved away. The result was out. The sound of the vicious dog was no longer loud, but in this doghouse full of dark red light, there were still so many vicious dogs. They just fell asleep on the ground, and they could wake up at any time. Lu Zixing also woke up. From an environment with soft light, he suddenly returned to this horrifying place, which made him very uncomfortable. At the same time, the pain of his ear being cut off returned to him again, which made him extremely uncomfortable. At that time, the lock of the dog cage that had been opened made him overjoyed. Lu Zixing covered the wound on his ear with one hand, pushed open the door of the cage, climbed out from inside, then tiptoed, relaxed his breathing, quickly opened the door, and walked out. Brother Black Panther seemed to be no longer in this doghouse. The remaining underlings were playing cards and drinking beer in another room of the doghouse at this time. Lu Zixing carefully ran past these people, escaping from this place with his heart pounding all the way. There was no other way. After all, the chips he bet on were too small, so he could only win such an opportunity to escape. Moreover, during the entire process of escaping, he could not get any help. But even if it was only this small opportunity, he had already lost 4 times in a row before he was able to win it. After losing 40 days of life, he only won this opportunity from the boss on the 5th round. It was equivalent to using 40 days of life in exchange for such an opportunity. It seemed that although he had used up his soul, he still had his life as the capital of the transaction. But he subconsciously chose to gamble. It was just because he could win big with a small bet. Lu Zixing didn't know whether it was worth it or not. After leaving the kennel, he began to run for his life. It wasn't until he escaped to the mainland that he slightly relaxed. This should be the road outside the suburbs of a certain district. He didn't see the road sign, so he couldn't determine the specific location for the time being. Lu Zixing was too tired at this time. He leaned against a street lamp and gasped for breath. He looked at the slightly dazzling light bulb above his head, but he couldn't see his hair. At this moment, dozens of white hairs had appeared. Ha 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 ha! However, he stood up with the help of the light bulb and laughed alone on the road in the middle of the wilderness. Perhaps it was because he had survived a disaster. Perhaps it was because of sadness. Or perhaps it was just because at this moment, only the flying insects wrapped around the light bulb were his companions. Or even, who knows? He stopped laughing, then reached into his pocket. He took out a coin. Gambling on the front and back, under absolute fairness, the probability of winning or losing each time was 50%. Boss, please come out. Boss Luo's figure seemed to come out of the darkness, quietly appearing at the edge of the light of the lamppost. Guest, what are you going to bet this time? Lu Zixing shook his head and asked after a moment of silence. I need excellent luck. If I use my life to buy it, how many lives do I need? Excellent luck? Please be specific, Luochio said indifferently. Lu Zixing thought for a while and said, no matter what I guess, I can guess it right. Is good luck good luck? The boss under the mask narrowed his eyes and asked softly, so, how long do you need to maintain it? Lu Zixing was stunned. Obviously, the boss still couldn't be convinced by his words. It was also obvious that it was unrealistic to get a lifetime of good luck casually. Then one day, 5 years, Luochio quoted directly. In fact, it was equivalent to compressing 5 years of good luck into one day. Lu Zixing gritted his teeth and asked again, then if we bet, where are the chips? Boss Luo said indifferently, bet half a year of life. Lu Zixing was stunned and subconsciously said, is there such a big difference? Luochio chuckled and said, of course, after all, the bet between the guest and me already has the condition of absolute fairness. So no matter how good the luck is, it can only be prohibited when we bet. Of course, the guest can also use a higher price to change this absolutely fair environment. I hope you can afford it. Lu Zixing suddenly looked disappointed. He could only put away his wishful thinking. He threw the coin again and said first, I still choose the male side. The coin spun up again and spun down. Finally, with a snap, Lu Zixing pressed it on the back of his hand. Finally, his palms slowly moved away. When the side of the coin appeared in front of the boss and Lu Zixing suddenly widened his eyes, and his breathing became rapid. Boss Luo chuckled softly at this time. The time now is 1:23:15 in the morning. So, before tomorrow's time, please enjoy your luck. Chapter 666. Congratulations, you won the prize. First prize. At the lottery station on the commercial street, the ticket seller looked enviously at the man in sportswear in front of him with sunglasses and a hoodie covering most of his face. Just a minute ago, this gentleman had used 5 yuan to buy a scratch-off ticket and hit the jackpot in one go. The 5 yuan had turned into 30,000 yuan in cash. Although it was the first prize, the bonus for this type of scratcher ticket was fixed, and the amount of the bonus was not large, so it was cashed directly. There was no need to go to a special place to get it. However, this gentleman in sportswear seemed to be extremely lucky today. After that, he continued to buy a few tickets in a row, and without exception, he scratched the winning numbers. They had never seen such a lucky person. It was as if he was favored by the goddess of luck. Some people couldn't help but broadcast it with their mobile phones. A real European, a walking European emperor. He wins whatever he scratches. Suck, suck, suck. However, the lucky man who was surrounded by the crowd lowered his head and quickly walked out of the crowd. It seemed that he didn't intend to continue buying. In fact, he didn't win a lot of money. What people were curious about was this person's good luck. In a restaurant on the commercial street, Lu Zixing hid in the back alley. Only then did he take off the hat on his head. There was no other way. It was too eye-catching to walk on the street without an ear. At this time, he had the cash he just won in his pocket. For ordinary people, this was something that could be celebrated for several days. But for Lu Zixing, This little money was not even enough for his usual meal. Of course, the lack of money was only one aspect, but it was not the main reason. The more important reason was that Lu Zixing found that his luck was indeed very good. It was so good that he felt incredible. It was indeed something that he won from the mysterious shop owner. But, he could only win, but he couldn't specify. He won more and won less. If he had to say, it was an inefficient gamble. Even if he won 2 yuan, it was also a lottery. It was also a manifestation of luck. Lu Zixing was not good at other things. He was just an idiot in the jewelry business, but he was unexpectedly proficient in all kinds of gambling. Mahjong, pai gow, dice poker, roulette, and even raw stone gambling. There were all kinds of gambling. However, as long as he could win the lottery, it was a way of reflecting luck. It really made Lu Zixing unable to be completely happy because he knew that this luck would disappear after today. It must be more specific, more profitable, and faster to earn money. Lu Zixing's eyes flashed a trace of madness, because he had already thought of how to use today's good luck. With such good luck, besides gambling, what else could make a lot of wealth more easily? It's a pity that those big lotteries with accumulated prize pools are not open today. Otherwise, Lu Zixing shook his head. It was naturally safer to win a huge lottery in theory. At least the money came openly and was easy to deal with. Even so, he still went to another lottery station and bought a bunch of lottery tickets with high bonuses one by one. What if I also won the lottery? Lu Zixing once again covered his head with his hat, called for a taxi, and said the name of a place. He seemed to be a little impatient. If this luck could continue, he could calmly and leisurely plan how to maximize its effect. The problem was he only had one day, and he had wasted more than 9 hours counting from the time he woke up in the wee hours of the morning. There is no other way. If the world doesn't work normally, what can you do even if you have good luck? Time. I have to cherish this little bit of luck. God knows if I will have such good luck the next time I gamble with that boss. I want a day's worth of luck the first time. You know, in order for him to escape from the kennel, he had to lose 4 times first. Gambling on luck required 1 month of life at a time. Lu Zixing took a deep breath. With his head lowered, he looked like a drowning dog that had just drilled through a hole in the wall. He looked down. I'm already like this. I have nothing left. Then, there is nothing to be afraid of. I want to win it back. Come on. The bigger the bet, the bigger the win. Place your bets. I want to win it back. And I also won the lottery. In front of a lottery station that had just been won by a certain gentleman many times in a row, Boss Luo used the lottery station scraper to scratch the scratching area of a lottery ticket. He didn't intend to use any means. He clearly knew which ticket was the biggest prize. The boss just bought 5 yuan and asked the ticket seller to randomly draw one for him. Look, 10 yuan. Luochio smiled slightly. I also won the lottery. At this time, Miss Maid was also playing this scratcher game with her master. 5 yuan for a lottery ticket. Miss Maid, who won 5 yuan, was equivalent to visiting the lottery station for free. The boss cashed in the 10 yuan and then used it to buy 2 boxes of lemon tea at the nearby convenience store. The attentive Miss Maid first inserted the straw for her master and then sent it to Luochio. Boss Luo, who had been declared as a completely useless person in some aspects of life, had no pressure now. The most leisurely duo in the club sipped the lemon tea on the street of the commercial street. Miss Maid suddenly said at this time, Master, Lu Zixing went to the underground casino again, but it's another one. I think he doesn't dare to appear in the casino where he owes money. It seems that he maximizes the good luck of this day. It's interesting, isn't it? Luochio smiled faintly. Since he proposed a fair gambling environment with me, things have become very interesting. In the eyes of outsiders, Lu Zixing seems to be a prodigal idiot. But who would have thought that he actually used such a method? This is probably the nature of a gambler. Yi smiled slightly. In Miss Maid's memory, there were many examples of families being ruined because of gambling. Besides that, sitting on a bench nearby, Luochio played with Yuye's flawless fingers, smiled and asked, Besides that, is there anything else? Yi whispered, That should be. Under great pressure, his mentality is a bit different. Their fingers intertwined for a moment. Then Boss Luo let go, as if he had just finished playing with a piece of art. He began to crazily think about how to gamble with me for his future. Naturally, it's more than simply losing money at the gambling table. Since getting this strange black diamond from Lu Zixing, only 2 days had passed. In the past 2 days, a lot of things had happened to Professor Trevor. For example, he had repeatedly pressed down on his property in his motherland. His property had been exposed. His wife and daughter wanted to apply to the court to temporarily freeze his account. It turned out that they suspected that Professor Trevor might have encountered some dangerous situation abroad, so they did so many abnormal behaviors. But it didn't matter. The important thing was that this black diamond had been obtained. With the help of the Book of the Dead, Professor Trev found that as long as he held this black diamond, he could finally complete a magic operation alone, just like Wang Yuechuan's success. But this black diamond was probably just a consumable item. The power it contained would eventually be used up one day. Professor Trev was continuing to translate the Book of the Dead at this time, while Wang Yuechuan was concentrating on the basic magic training of the manipulation chapter. He had become more and more skilled. This young body, the eternal life mentioned in the soul chapter. A strange color flashed in Professor Trev's eyes. At this time, Wang Yuechuan stopped, frowned slightly, and looked at Professor Trev coldly. Why? Is there any new discovery? What a keen sense of touch. Professor Trev nodded calmly. Then he suddenly had an idea. Wang, I just deciphered a passage that is very important for you and me to master magic power. I feel that we need to try it. Chapter 667. To Wang Yuechuan's surprise, they drove all the way out. In the end, Professor Trevor led him to a mountain in the suburbs. There were only a few peasant houses on the road, which could be said to be a place of panic. In the end, the two got out of the car and then climbed up the mountain on foot. As a policeman, Wang Yuechuan's physical fitness was quite good, but Professor Trevor couldn't. After a while, he was panting like a cow, and his head was full of sweat. Wang Yuechuan had to worry about whether the professor could hold on. In addition, Professor Trevor kept looking around during the process of walking, frowning sometimes. Wang Yuechuan believed that this old professor was also here for the first time, so he was not familiar with this place. Professor, what are you looking for? Wang Yuechuan asked calmly. Grave, Professor Trevor said without turning his head. To be precise, it should be a place called a mass grave. I have seen some local residents mention this place when chatting on the internet. Well, it should be in this direction. Let's hurry up. Wang Yuechuan didn't say much. The Book of the Dead was translated by the professor. Although he had doubts, he didn't have a valid point of view. But could he find someone else to translate it besides Professor Trevor? Wang Yuechuan believed that besides Professor Trevor, there must be someone who could translate, but it was not easy to find. More importantly, it was better to know less about the Book of the Dead. Here we are. Professor Chui Fo suddenly stopped and smiled. Wang, if you use the words of the East, that is, the heavens will not disappoint those who persevere. Really? Wang Yuechuan nodded. What should we do next? You seem to have mentioned before going out. Oh, ritual? This was what Professor Trevor mentioned before going out. He said that through a specific ritual, it could also speed up the practice of magic and improve the individual's magic power. But the conditions were very harsh. Professor Trevor nodded at this time and looked around. This was part of the mountainside. The terrain was concave. The surroundings were shaded, and the humidity was thick. In the exposed soil, some corners of the Golden Tower that used to be used to bury bones could be seen. The Book of the Dead has already mentioned that the composition of our magic power is mainly physical strength, willpower, spirit, and so on. At this time, Professor Trevor put down the backpack on his back and took out the things he was going to use. At the same time, he looked at Wang Yuechuan. This is why you can master and use magic faster than me. Because you're younger than me. Wang Yuechuan said calmly. I already knew that. So what does it have to do with this mass grave? Professor Chui Fo said, I don't know who wrote this Book of the Dead. Although there are some differences in the translation of many meanings in modern words, it can still be speculated. For example, will and spirit seem to be the same thing in the eyes of modern people. but the Book of the Dead differentiated them. Physical strength was easy to explain, but why was willpower and spirit separated? I understand it this way. Will is actually our thoughts, and the so-called spirit should refer to spiritual power, a special kind of energy that can be specifically expressed with numerical values. Wang Yuechuan frowned and said, "Are you saying that this place may have this kind of special energy, spiritual power?" Professor Trevor nodded and said, "Yes. It is mentioned in the Book of the Dead that all life has a soul. The difference is the strength, but the birth and annihilation of the soul are the same process. If the physical body, as the carrier, dies, then the soul will disappear in most cases. However, the soul will always die slower than the body. If some souls have strong emotions when they were alive, they can easily transform into another special energy body in some special places after death. This kind of energy body should be called a ghost, or the predecessor of a ghost. Through this special ritual, we can absorb the energy of these special energy bodies and transform them into our spirit, that is, spiritual power. In that case, let's start," Wang Yuechuan said directly. Professor Chui Fo didn't procrastinate at this time. After taking the Book of the Dead from Wang Yuechuan's hand, he opened one of the pages. Then, according to the pattern on this page, he began to put down crystals bought from the market in different positions on this humid mass grave. If these different crystals were connected with a line, it seemed to form a specific pattern. It was probably the content of the Book of the Dead. "Professor, when did you buy this crystal? Why don't I have an impression of it?" Wang Yuechuan looked at Professor Trevor abruptly. He was looking at a black crystal. This crystal was actually polished into the appearance of a common diamond. "Oh, this," Professor Trevor said casually. "When I was walking the day before yesterday, I accidentally passed by an antique shop and bought it. This black crystal is of good quality. I originally intended to use it as a raw material for magic, but I happened to find this ritual, so I used it." And Wang Yuechuan just nodded. Professor Trevor was busy for a while and finally finished the arrangement. Then, he looked at Wang Yuechuan and hesitated. "Wang, you see, who will perform this ritual first? To be honest, I just finished translating. I'm not sure if it is effective or dangerous. Or I'll go first." Wang Yuechuan stared at Professor Trevor. In Professor Trevor's view, his gaze seemed to have a special magic. Of course, this magic was not magic. It was a gaze that could make people panic. "No need." Wang Yuechuan suddenly shook his head. "I can go first. Professor, it is very important that you are responsible for the translation. If you're injured, it will only slow down the translation progress. Besides, I'm stronger than you. Even if there's an accident, I can deal with it better than you. This is okay." Professor Trevor nodded, then looked at Wang Yuechuan and said seriously, "Wang, thank you." "You're welcome," Wang Yuechuan said calmly. "This is just a matter of priority. So what should I do?" "You go straight inside." Professor Trevor pointed to the ritual array. "Then I'll try to activate these crystals outside. If there are still spirits left in this place, they will be attracted by these crystals. When these spirits enter the ritual array, they will be restored to pure spirit power. You should be able to feel it, then start meditating." According to Professor Trevor, Wang Yuechuan sat on the ground and closed his eyes at the same time. Professor Trevor narrowed his eyes at this time. "If it's here, this is a good opportunity. It's a pity that I don't have enough ability." At the same time, although Wang Yuechuan proposed to try it himself, the glance just now still made Professor Trevor afraid. Wang Yuechuan still didn't fully trust him. "But from the moment you peeked at my notes, you have already fallen into it," Professor Trevor thought while starting the ritual. When the crystals around suddenly lit up with a glimmer from inside, the surrounding temperature seemed to drop a little. Wang Yuechuan also felt that something wonderful began to emerge around him. "Sure enough, there are still some spirits left. Quickly absorb them," Professor Trevor said quickly at this time. Wang Yuechuan had a very basic feeling at this time. Since the birth of magic power, he could feel that there was a special seed in his head all the time. This was the so-called magic power seed. At this time, this magic power seed was absorbing the energy of the transformed spirits. It was not much, just a trace, but it was slowly nourishing this magic power seed. Not knowing how long it took, this nourishing feeling suddenly stopped. Wang Yuechuan subconsciously opened his eyes. Why did it stop? Professor Trevor outside was pale at this time, as if he had collapsed. He slumped on the ground. King, I can't hold on anymore. It consumes a lot to maintain this ritual. In fact, increasing magic power should be to increase the upper limit of magic power. It was too slow to increase the upper limit by relying on meditation. This absorption made Wang Yuechuan's magic power seed grow by almost 3 times. He naturally felt a sense of loss when it suddenly stopped. But since this ritual was useful, there was no hurry. Wang Yuechuan stood up readily. In this case, you teach me how to start it, and then you absorb it, Professor. Soon after, Professor Trevor also began to absorb the energy transformed by the spirits, and his complexion gradually became better. As for Wang Yuechuan, he was calculating the gains and losses between consumption and absorption. Of course, the gain was far greater than the consumption. After all, the consumed magic power could be recovered naturally. Basically, if he had enough rest, he could almost replenish it in a day or 2. However, it was not easy to increase the upper limit. While he was calculating, he was also observing the so-called spirits that were absorbed by the ritual, the Book of the Dead. Then, what would the world of these spirits formed after death be? What would the world after death be? Whether it was the East or the West, there were a lot of descriptions of the world after death. For example, the Eastern underworld and the Western hell, or the so-called heaven, and so on. These descriptions even went through a lot of artistic processing. The world after death had even been imagined by human beings as a complete and strict world. However, no one had ever really seen the so-called world of the dead. If these spirits were just a simple aggregation of some kind of energy, why would they look like this? Although they were almost transparent, one could still vaguely see their appearance when they were alive. And one of the spirits, although it was absorbed by the ritual array, looked at Wang Yuechuan at this moment. Its expression suddenly became painful, began to distort, and finally revealed a ferocious expression. Wang Yuechuan could even feel a sense of discomfort from the spirit that stared at him. That was hatred. If it was just energy, where did the hatred come from? Did it still retain its thoughts? If it still retained its thoughts, according to Professor Trevor's explanation, the will in the magic power was equivalent to human thoughts. Then, did it mean that the spirit still retained its will? What would the world after death be like? Ghost? Yes. Teacher. In the huge underground training ground of the pet hospital, Mo Xiaofei, who had just finished a training, was resting at this moment. While drinking Long Shua's special drink to replenish physical strength, he asked, "In the past 2 days, the girls in our class have begun to talk about the pen spirit, so I'm curious to ask, are there really ghosts?" Long Shua asked casually while picking her ears, "Why do they talk about the pen spirit?" "Because there's a movie recently, a horror movie about the pen spirit," Mo Xiaofei said without thinking, so they talked about it. It's a hot topic. Long Shua yawned. The pen spirit still exists, but it's a little different from the pen spirit you know. What's the difference? Mo Xiaofei suddenly showed a curious baby look. First of all, the pen spirit has no ability to answer all your questions. Long Shua picked her other ear. The first pen spirit was actually some scholars. Well, it should be said that they were the ancient scholars who studied hard in order to pass the imperial examinations. In short, they were the guys who studied until they died. They died in front of the books, but their obsession didn't disperse, and they would cling to the books. Later, such books were obtained by other scholars. Because they were both passionate about knowledge, it was easy for them to resonate with each other. At this time, the so-called pen spirit would appear. The scholar would ask the pen spirit about the knowledge in the book and get the answer. I don't know how this thing spread. It was originally a process of the dead scholar teaching the living scholar knowledge. Over time, it became the pen spirit that knew everything. It's funny. That's still okay. Mo Xiaofei immediately gave Long Shua a flash. Isn't this equivalent to getting a personal tutor for free? Long Shirao waved her hand. How can the pen spirit appear so easily? Only a true scholar with a pure heart can become a pen spirit and attach to the books and not disperse for a long time. Generally, they'll just die when they're dead. Anyway, the underworld isn't open now. The 3 souls and 7 spirits will soon be destroyed by the yang energy of the human world. Oh, Mo Xiaofei nodded, then suddenly froze. Teacher, what did you say just now? The underworld isn't open? Is there really such a thing as the underworld? Is there really another world after death? Long Shirao continued to yawn, propping up her small head. Why, you don't believe in this kind of thing? And Mo Xiaofei scratched his head. No, I just feel that it's a bit illogical. Isn't the underworld a place for people to be reincarnated? In this case, it doesn't sound like a problem for people to be reincarnated after death. But the population has been increasing all the time. Even if the people who died before reincarnated, they can't account for so many new people, right? Then, where do the souls of the new people come from? It's impossible for a soul to play dozens or even more Smurfs after reincarnating, right? Long Shirao smiled, suddenly saying, if you want to put it this way, it's originally a multi-account login. What? Mo Xiaofei opened his mouth. Long Shirao rolled her eyes. Otherwise, why do you think it's called 3 souls and 7 spirits? 1 soul or 1 spirit is enough to be reincarnated. A complete soul can be split into 10 avatars. There's nothing wrong with that. As for the reincarnated soul, it will gradually grow into a complete 3 souls and 7 spirits through the body's nourishment. This is a complete reincarnation cycle. So, no matter how many people there won't be a shortage of souls. Sometimes, because of this, the population of the underworld will explode. It's too busy. Many years ago, there was a fool who said that he wouldn't become a Buddha until hell was empty. But because of this, he was directly cheated. Damn. Teacher, is the fool you mentioned the legendary D. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva? What do you think? Long Shirao didn't answer, but asked a question. Mo Xiaofei knew that he asked a very stupid question, so he laughed dryly. But why is the underworld closed now? If it's closed, wouldn't there be no reincarnation? Long Shirao shook her head. I don't know about this, but the passage from the underworld to the human world was closed by someone or for some unknown reason. I haven't seen the army of soul hunters from the underworld for about 100 years. Closed. Mo Xiaofei was a little confused and asked subconsciously, if it's not opened, where do the souls of the new people come from? Chapter 668. Long Shirao's words were like a dream to Mo Xiaofei. However, even an ordinary person like him had superpowers. Therefore, he subconsciously believed the words of this little teacher. Because I'm a true soul, Mo Xiaofei was stunned. When he looked at this little teacher again, his expression was much more dignified. Long Shirao said, didn't I just say that when the local government was still open, in order to cope with the increase in population, they would split the 3 souls and 7 spirits and inject them into newborns? Through the nourishment of the body, these split souls and spirits will grow again. Mo Xiaofei nodded. Long Shirao continued. This is why human beings are ignorant from birth. They need a long life and learning to reshape their thoughts, 3 views, and so on. Only in this process of birth, aging, and death can the souls and spirits be nourished enough. Generally speaking, the soul will grow faster than the spirit, and those who are born from the soul will be better than those who are born from the spirit. This is why some people are born smarter than others or have a certain talent. But when the different individuals of the soul and spirits grow into the complete 3 souls and 7 spirits, theoretically, it's almost the same. This is also why some people can catch up with their lack of talent through hard work. Of course, there are many variables in this part. In short, it depends on the so-called fate of the person. Speaking of this, Long Shirao paused and then added, in addition, there are some excellent souls who can enjoy the treatment of not being split up and directly enter the 6 paths of reincarnation again. Usually this type of guy has a lot of merits or has the ability to become the tide of the era. A few of them are involved in some factors such as the change of fate, the alternation of dynasties, and so on. But these are the so-called chess games played by some people who are so bored that their balls hurt. Then, for the sake of using the world as a chess game, they intervene. Now, for you, you won't understand even if I tell you. Teacher, I don't understand anymore. Okay. Then about my true soul. Mo Xiaofei was only concerned about this point, the hidden meaning from his own thoughts. He always felt that if he couldn't figure it out, he would always be in a state of anxiety. Don't interrupt. Long Shua glared at Mo Xiaofei. That's all I've said. The so-called true soul is a creature that is reincarnated from the 6 paths of reincarnation in the netherworld, whether it's a human, a beast with spiritual wisdom, or even a demon like me. However, since hell had been shut down for 100 years, Kelowna had stopped sending souls and spirits out of hell. Then, where did the souls of newborn living beings come from? Didn't I say that the physical body of a living being can nourish the soul? Therefore, even if hell didn't send over souls, living beings, especially the human body, which was the spirit of all things, still possessed the ability to give birth to souls of their own. Such self-born entities were generally referred to as false souls or false spirits by the underworld. It's just that the 3 souls and 7 spirits of these false spirits can't be separated, and after they leave the body after death, not only can they not be maintained for a long time, but after being restrained by the underworld, the success rate of reincarnation is even lower. Think about it. If the whole world becomes a dummy of a false spirit, what would the world become? Mo Xiaofei said in a daze, "But teacher, aren't they all living beings? Then, are real and fake really different?" Of course not. Long Shua stood up from the sofa, arms akimbo, and said fiercely, "How can it be different? Didn't I say that the reincarnation of a true soul, whether it's congenital excellence or acquired excellence, will eventually achieve excellence? But not only are these fake and inferior things difficult to be reincarnated, even if the success rate is increased by a large number of people, those who are reincarnated as fake spirits are, to put it bluntly, born mentally retarded. They are easily tempted by all kinds of things, not to mention being able to maintain their original intentions. Tell me, when all the living beings in the world are degenerating, not thinking of making progress, muddling through and waiting for death, under such an atmosphere, can modern society still develop after a long period of time? Mo Xiaofei tried to imagine, but he couldn't imagine such a scene even if he exhausted his imagination. But after listening to Long Shua's words, he felt a chill on his back because he thought of a terrifying thing. Teacher, you just said that the netherworld hasn't opened for 100 years. Mo Xiaofei said in horror. Decades have passed in the blink of an eye. Then, aren't the people now all fake? Not for the time being. Long Shua shook her head. When a netherworld doesn't open, the souls of the reincarnated creatures with true souls are not taken away after death, and then reincarnated. This part of the true souls will wander between heaven and earth. Some will be attracted by the new body and directly live there. But because it's not through the reincarnation passage of a netherworld, this kind of independent reincarnation will constantly consume the origin of the true soul. As for some, they persist for a long time and don't choose to live in new body, so they're consumed by heaven and earth. At the same time, even if they reincarnate independently, the true soul can't be separated by itself. So, to be exact, the living beings with true souls that exist in the present world are decreasing rapidly, while the number of fake people is increasing constantly. So this is the reason why there are more and more mentally retarded people now. Teacher, you mean? I'm one of the true souls that reincarnated for the last time 100 years ago? Mo Xiaofei finally understood. Yes or no? Long Shua shook her head and said, I can't judge this point, because among the many pseudo-spirits, there's a very harsh chance that they can mutate into a true soul. If it's a true soul that came from a pseudo-spirit, well, the netherworld will call these very few innate true souls. Teacher, even you don't know? Mo Xiaofei asked in surprise. Long Shuo rolled her eyes and said, "Do you think I'm omniscient and omnipotent? If you want to know, ask that black-hearted businessman. He must know. Or, he has the ability to know. Except for the netherworld, who can distinguish through the life and death book? Who else can? It must be the black-hearted owner of that shop." "Teacher, you've used the word black-hearted twice to describe him. But teacher, if you can't distinguish, why do you say I'm a true soul?" Mo Xiaofei recalled what Long Shuo said at the beginning. Long Shuo poked Mo Xiaofei's forehead with disappointment. "Idiot! Why don't you think about it? If you weren't a true soul, that black-hearted boss wouldn't have any expectations for you. Have you forgotten? Your soul has been traded away. When you die, your soul won't belong to you anymore, okay? Listen, for all living things, death is not the end. For true souls, death is the normal state of life. A person's life was, at best, a long vacation for the true souls. Don't think that after you die and lose your thoughts, you'll have the thought of, who cares what happens after I die? Because when you're able to recall your many reincarnations, you will definitely regret it to the extreme. So now let's see if you still dare to rush forward and let yourself die in vain." Mo Xiaofei suddenly shook his head at this time and bowed to Long Shuo, saying seriously, "Teacher, thank you for telling me these things. But if I'm fearful and violate my own beliefs because of this, then what's the point of my hard training? Even if my soul is taken away after death, I won't violate the original promise. I'll go all the way with reverence." "Idiot, even because of this, you'll be loved by that black-hearted guy." Long Shuo heaved a sigh of relief, but her eyes softened. How could she not love this human with such a pure heart? In a short time, Lu Zixing probably won't gamble with me again before this day's strong luck ends, right? After strolling on the street for a while, Boss Luo returned to the club. Miss Maid went up to the second floor for a while and then came down again. On the tray in her hand, dim light balls floated slowly, giving off a lifeless feeling. "Master, this is the harvest of God King this week." Miss Maid smiled slightly. 47. Luochio just glanced at it and nodded. "They're all fake souls. Then throw them into the altar." As Boss Luo said, he waved his hand, and these dim light balls disappeared. Yin 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 yin. Chapter 669. Although Mo Xiaofei was very optimistic about the truth of reincarnation, he remained silent for a while after listening to it. Then, he continued to work hard on his superpower training. But Long Shuo was still worried that this kid was just forcing himself to be calm. She couldn't help asking, "Xiaofei, don't you have any thoughts after knowing about the true soul?" Mo Xiaofei stopped at this moment. "Teacher, what should I think?" Long Shuo frowned slightly, saying coldly, "For example, don't you care about your family, whether your parents are real or fake?" Mo Xiaofei kept silent for a while, and then shook his head. "It's a lie if I say I don't worry. But teacher, whether it's true or not, they'll be my parents for the rest of my life. Isn't that the truth?" Long Shuo nodded. Mo Xiaofei smiled cheerfully. "My father taught me what is self-improvement. Although he was physically handicapped, he didn't give up on life. My mother never left my father and protected our family. If that's the case, what's the difference between the truth and the lies? I don't know the truth behind reincarnation. I only know that my father and mother are my parents in this life. They gave birth to me and gave me care and protection. That's enough. I don't intend to think too much about other things." Long Shuo stared at Mo Xiaofei for a while and then nodded. "Let's call it a day. It's almost time, let's go back." It was indeed almost time. Mo Xiaofei didn't say anything and followed Long Shuo to leave the underground training ground. However, Mo Xiaofei flew. As for Long Shuo, damn Chichikamaya, why did he dig so deep? Of course she climbed. It was an iron staircase leading to the top. Teacher, do you want to pull you up? Get up." Long Shuo roared at once. Mo Xiaofei was startled. He couldn't control the speed of his ascent and bumped into the iron door at the top. Fortunately, he had learned how to set up a shield-like air wall around his body, so he didn't break his head, but he still knocked open the iron door with a bang. You're still too young. Long Shirua sighed. But at this moment, Long Shirua heard a shout from above, followed by a roar. When she struggled to climb up, she saw that Emo Xiaofei's expression became very anxious. In front of him, there were two muscular men with painful expressions on their faces. The two burly men stared at Emo Xiaofei with astonishment and fury at the same time. "Teacher," Emo Xiaofei hurriedly said at this time, "I didn't do it on purpose. As soon as I came up, these two rushed at me. I didn't think at that time, so I just whipped them. I really didn't intend to hurt them." Listening to Emo Xiaofei's words, the two men suddenly felt like dying. They were the warriors carefully selected by the greedy wolf clan with high-level demon bloodline, and then whipped them casually. And it was obviously just a human with no demon aura at all. When did humans become so powerful? No, the white-haired woman who looked for trouble with young master was also a human. Damn human. Why didn't he go to heaven? That's not right. It seems like this human is still floating in the air. Okay, I got it. Long Shirua waved her hand and said helplessly, "Don't say any more. If you continue, these two guys will go crazy. The greedy wolf clan has strong self-esteem. I'm afraid they will fight with you until the end." Emo Xiaofei swallowed his saliva, then slowly landed behind Long Shirua. He looked like an obedient child and said to the two greedy wolf clan warriors, "I'm really sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't cultivate well enough, so I hurt you. I'm sorry." "You didn't cultivate well enough? Then if you cultivated well enough, why haven't you gone to heaven yet?" The two greedy wolf clan warriors stared at Emo Xiaofei again, revealing their sharp teeth. Long Shirua rubbed her forehead. At this time, she waved her hand and said indifferently, "Since you two have woken up, then come with me. I have something to ask you." Since Sun Shaosheng carried these two greedy wolf clan warriors back for treatment the day before yesterday, they had been unconscious. Now, they probably just woke up and didn't know the situation. Long Shirua could learn what happened from them. "Who are you? A little girl dares to order us." It was fine that Emo Xiaofei couldn't win, but this little girl dared to talk to them in such a tone. "Me?" Long Shirua said indifferently. "My surname is Long. This pet hospital is opened by Long Shirua. Who do you think I am?" Indeed, there had always been a breath that made the two greedy wolf clan warriors extremely uneasy. That was no longer the breath of a big demon beast. Kelowna Shinryu, all demon beasts submit. Otherwise, the two of them would not be so cautious after waking up. If they didn't suddenly see a human flying out of the ground, they wouldn't make a move. At first, they just wanted to catch her and ask, It's Master Long Jun who saved us." One of the greedy wolf clan warriors asked in surprise at this time, "May I ask where Master Long Jun is?" "I'm Zhan Yong of the greedy wolf clan. I want to thank Master Long Jun personally." She went out to pick herbs. Long Shirua shook her head. "You don't have to say much to thank me. You just need to tell me what happened. Who hurt you and forced your young master to use greedy wolf's descent? By the way, who is your young master?" It seems to be true. Zhan Yong looked at his companion at this time and saw through his thoughts. The breath of Shinryu here, and she easily said the spell, greedy wolf's descent. Wait, this little girl said her surname was Long. I don't know what relationship she has with Master Long Jun. Countless thoughts flashed in Zhan Yong's mind. In the end, he said respectfully, "It's like this, little Lord Long. A few days ago, we followed Purple Star Young Master and planned to go to Mount Tai to participate in the Penglai Conference. Unexpectedly, we met a white-haired human woman on the way. Achoo! Nero rubbed her nose with her finger. At this moment, she was sitting in a bus stop on a mountain road. It was already winter in this place. It should have been a heavy snowfall earlier, so now it was all white. However, with a body trained to be an immortal general, he should be able to hold on for a long time even if the temperature was more than 10 degrees below zero. Who is talking bad about me? Nero yawned, then took out a blow candy from her pocket and stuffed it into her mouth and chewed. Soon after, a pink ball was blown out of her mouth and finally broke. Well, although I have the boss's compass, it is probably a little difficult to catch up with that mutated Prometheus now. Why don't I go to this Punlai conference to take a look according to what the Greedy Wolf clan said? I can also see what this thing is for. She looked at the thing in her hand. This was the secret treasure that the Greedy Wolf clan chased after her all the way. She jumped up from the stool she was sitting on. Since she had decided, then she should act. If I go this way, it should be faster to cross the Yalu River. By the way, I can see if I can get some pocket money on the way. Nero stretched. After waiting for a long time, the dilapidated country bus was slowly driving over at this time. Well, in this country where the current ruler was called Sampang, there was no need to ask for so much. In other words, you don't know the whereabouts of your purple star young master? Long Shirua frowned. She didn't use Taoist techniques. She just held a strange knife and forced them to snatch the secret treasure of the Greedy Wolf clan. She even forced the current young master to take the initiative to descend with the Greedy Wolf clan. In the end, it was still unknown whether he was alive or dead. Such a human was very rare. Little Lord Long, please help us find our clan's purple star young master. Zhang Yong and his companion knelt on the ground at the same time and pleaded. The Greedy Wolf clan is arrogant. You two are willing to kneel to me, a stranger, for the young master. It shows your protective heart. Long Shirao waved her hand. Get up. No need to be so polite. I will find a way to find your purple star young master. You can stay here to recuperate these days. In addition, he is Mo Xiaofei, my student. Don't have any conflicts in the future. Zhang Yong and his companion had to nod. They couldn't win even if they had a conflict. Chapter 670. After getting the assurance from Little Lord Long, the two Greedy Wolf clan warriors finally felt relieved. Because in the eyes of these two Greedy Wolf clan warriors, Little Lord Long must have a very close relationship with Sir Lord Long. Since this Little Lord Long agreed, it meant that Sir Shinryu of Kelowna would not refuse this matter. Little Lord Long. After Long Shirao prescribed some medicine for the two Greedy Wolf clan warriors, she arranged for them to rest with another healer. Then, she took Mo Xiaofei to her office. Mo Xiaofei thought that Long Shirao was going to reprimand him, so he was mentally prepared. Unexpectedly, Long Shirao said, Xiaofei, from now on, you change the training mode. What? Long Shirao said matter-of-factly. Your next training is to find the Greedy Wolf clan's purple star young master in this city. Huh? Long Shirao did not give Mo Xiaofei any room to express his opinion. She directly threw out the self-portrait of the purple star young master obtained from the two Greedy Wolf clan warriors. She looked at Mo Xiaofei and said, Take this portrait and look for him. Listen, to put it bluntly, your superpower is a general-purpose psychic power. It is not particularly strong, but that is to say, you can become strong in any direction. Looking for someone is also a good way to train. That's right, Mo Xiaofei looked at the self-portrait given by this little teacher. Isn't it because this self-portrait is simply a painting style of the soul? Those two Greedy Wolf clan warriors are probably the real soul painters. How can I find him? Cough, cough. Long Shou said seriously at this time. Xiaofei, as my student, although you can announce it, you must not weaken the prestige of our sect. So, work hard and remember, not announcing it. It won't affect anything, right? Mo Xiaofei sighed and asked curiously, By the way, teacher, do we really have a sect here? May I ask which sect you belong to? Sect. The full name of a sect is too long. I'm afraid you won't be able to remember it. Long Shu said seriously, Let's call it Ling's Spirit. Long Shirua glanced at the bookshelves at the back of the office, but couldn't find anything suitable. She simply said, Spirit. Sect. Spirit sect. Spirit tablet? Teacher, is this really okay? That's right, Spirit sect. From now on, you're the first disciple of Spirit sect. I'd better go out and look for him first. On the turntable, a ball of grayish-white mud was constantly spinning. It was stretched out and formed the shape of a simple bottle. He was able to control the appearance of this clay embryo with his two hands as he wished, just like the creator. This was the reason why Ho Chun Yuhan became a ceramist in the first place. In the ceramic art classroom, soft music was playing. Ho Chun Yuhan didn't know what she was thinking. Suddenly, she heard a student's voice. Teacher, Your clay embryo is spoiled. Ho Chin Yuhan was taken aback. Her hands trembled. The clay embryo that could be saved suddenly became a messy ball of mud. Ho Chin Yuhan looked at it and was stunned for a while. Then, she turned off the turntable directly. At this time, the madam students all looked at Ho Chin Yuhan puzzledly. This was the first time this happened. "Teacher, are you uncomfortable?" a madam student asked curiously. Ho Chin Yuhan did look a little bad today. She probably didn't sleep well and was often distracted. Listening to the student's words, Ho Chin Yuhan shook her head and apologized. "I'm sorry, everyone. I'm a little out of it today. But don't worry, today's class doesn't count. I'll make up for it with another class." "Teacher, it doesn't matter what the class is. The important thing is you. What's wrong with you?" The madam students were always very gossipy. "Did you quarrel with your husband?" "It's okay. Let us hear it. I quarrel with my husband every day, too." "Yeah, my husband is the same. He always yells. He's so annoying. But husband and wife don't have overnight hatred. It will be fine in a few days." "Yes, yes. Teacher, why don't we skip class today? Let's take you out to play. I have a good place. You will be satisfied." "No, I'm fine. Thank you for your concern." Ho Chin Yuhan shook her head. But she didn't expect that the enthusiasm of these madams was far beyond her expectations. Suddenly, these madam students threw away the things in their hands. After wiping them clean, they pulled her and said, "Teacher Ho Chun, let's take you out to play and relax." There's really no need. It's okay. Mrs. Zhang knows people. Let's go to spa first, and then have a good meal. If you want to play, let's go crazy. Tonight, you'll go home later. Don't say anything. You should at least make your husband nervous." Nervous? Ho Chin Yuhan's body stiffened slightly, and her thoughts were in a mess. She let these madam students pull her out of the pottery art classroom. On the treadmill in the fitness room, someone was sweating profusely. If someone came close to take a look, they would probably be quite surprised if this man who was running on the treadmill was stimulated by something. The slope was 8% and the speed was 15%. Zhu Maolin didn't go back to the company today. In fact, after meeting Ho Chin Yuhan at the cemetery yesterday and proposing a divorce, he didn't go home that night. He simply found a hotel to spend the night. He was waiting for a response. If his wife didn't look at him and nod to him, then no matter what he said, it didn't matter. In fact, it was the same for him. Husband and wife, sharing the same fate. His heart seemed to explode at any time. This extreme running was draining his energy little by little. "You are amazing." A young girl in sportswear, with a strong body and a ponytail, came to a treadmill next to him at this time, looking at Zhu Maolin with admiration. He panted, chose to stop at this time, and began to walk slowly. He just glanced at the other party. The girl who also came here to work out seemed to be very familiar with how to talk to men. At this time, she didn't mind the indifference at all. She smiled with dimples. "Handsome, I just came here. I heard that you shouldn't use this too fast at the beginning. I don't understand. Can you teach me?" "There's a coach over there." Zhu Maolin signaled with his eyes indifferently, then walked directly off the treadmill. The girl saw that Zhu Maolin had no intention of being flirted with at all. She turned around and left. She couldn't help but snort coldly, muttering, "I'm afraid he is too strong and incompetent." Zhu Maolin heard it, but he didn't stop. He just took a simple shower in the shower room of the gym. When he came out, he saw that the woman had already chatted with a man. It was just that the other party cast a proud look at him. Zhu Maolin still didn't respond and strode out of the gym. "Do you know him?" The man who was talking to the girl asked curiously at this time. "I don't know him. It's useless to know him." The girl shrugged. The man chuckled at this time. "That's a pity. The person just now is a celebrity in the advertising industry. I don't know how many powerful advertisements he has made. Some people even joked that this is our advertising leader here. If you can know him, it will be much better than me, the photographer." Is that so?" The girl laughed dryly. She could only laugh dryly. "But you're not bad. I'm not that kind of person. If I knew earlier, I would have persisted in flirting with him. You are so nice." The man smiled. Walking out of the gym, Zhu Maolin pinched his eyebrows and walked aimlessly on the street. He bought a pack of cigarettes from the convenience store. When he was about to order, he suddenly hesitated. Don't smoke. Didn't you say you want to quit smoking? Didn't you say you want a child? These words still lingered in his ears. Zhu Maolin's fingers moved a few times and finally stuffed the cigarette into the cigarette box, then looked around. He seemed to be a little flustered until he saw the dustbin not far away. Then he walked over quickly and threw it away, as if this could make it easier. Wow, what a waste. Manager, isn't this cigarette worth a few dozen yuan? At the same time, Zhu Maolin heard such a voice. He turned around, only to see a huge pink rabbit appear before his eyes. A human-sized rabbit. You are? Zhu Maolin frowned. The voice just now should be a woman's voice, but with this rabbit head, he couldn't tell who it was. She should know him or he knew her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have such a tone. It's me. Zhu Maolin took off the rabbit head on his head. In a huge rabbit body, a small head popped out at this time. Her face was red, and her hair was stuck on her cheeks. She was sweating profusely, but it gave people a feeling of special vigor. Xiaolu, Zhu Maolin was a little surprised to meet this girl again. You. Why are you here? In just a few days, it was the third time he met this girl. But this time, he didn't think the other party was here on purpose. It should be a long time. Otherwise, her body wouldn't be wet like this. I'm working part-time. Xiaolu smiled. Zhu Maolin found that Xiaolu would reveal a small canine tooth when she smiled this time. The girl's eyes were still clear. It was the color of the raw stone that had not been carved yet. Working part-time. Xiaolu nodded and said naturally, yes, if I don't work, I can't pay back the money. I don't want to be chased by those people again. And this job is really good. Although I have to wear this thing, it's 25 yuan an hour. How long have you been standing here? Zhu Maolin looked behind Xiaolu. In front of them was a large chain store for hot pot. In addition to Xiaolu, there were several other people wearing fluffy rabbit clothes scattered nearby. Not long, a few hours. Xiaolu tilted her head and looked at Zhu Maolin at this time. Manager, why are you here? Zhu Maolin suddenly didn't know how to answer Xiaolu's question. Xiaolu said at this time, I know. Manager, you must be collecting materials and walking around looking for inspiration, right? Kind of. Zhu Maolin nodded. He always felt that this girl was able to give people, or perhaps just give him a very relaxed feeling. Was it because she was full of vitality? Or was it because of something else? Hey, over there, do you still want to work? I don't pay you to stand on the street and chat with acquaintances. A middle-aged woman in a suit walked out of the hot pot restaurant with an ugly expression. Xiaolu glanced at her in fear, then hurriedly looked at Zhu Maolin and said, I'm sorry, manager. I won't talk to you. Otherwise, today's salary will be gone, and I will work for nothing. With that said, she hurriedly put on the hood and began to distribute flyers. She looked very clumsy in the rabbit clothes. When she walked, she staggered. Zhu Maolin looked at her and subconsciously smiled. She was really relaxed. Perhaps it was because this girl was not too scheming and worked very hard to live in this society. He thought for a while and walked into the hot pot restaurant. After a while, the middle-aged woman who had just yelled at Xiaolu came to Xiaolu again. She looked at Xiaolu and said, You don't have to work anymore. Why? Xiaolu took off the hood. She looked anxious and apologized. I won't chat with people anymore. I don't dare. No. The woman looked at Xiaolu up and down, shook her head and said, The gentleman just now is a friend of our boss. He said he wants you to have a meal with him. Our boss said to let you go. You will be paid the same as your salary. Xiaolu subconsciously looked at the hot pot restaurant in front of her. She saw that Zhu Maolin had already looked at her from the card seat near the window. He waved his hand, indicating that she could come over. She then walked all the way with an uneasy look. When Xiaolu walked in front of Zhu Maolin, she asked curiously, Manager, do you know the owner of this restaurant? Zhu Maolin said casually, He's not a friend. He's just a previous customer. I've only done some advertising for this hot pot restaurant. That's still very impressive. Xiaolu blinked. Zhu Maolin was taken aback and suddenly said, Do you want to change your clothes first? Xiaolu thought for a while and said, No need, right? If the minister asks me to send the order later, I have to change it again. It's very troublesome. Up to you, if you don't feel inconvenient. Zhu Maolin smiled. It was the first time he saw someone eating hot pot in such clothes. But if it was this girl, it seemed to be a matter of course, except for the strange gazes around. I'd better change my clothes. Xiaolu lowered her head at this time. She probably also noticed the strange gazes of the guests around her. Go. Zhu Maolin nodded. When Xiaolu came back again, he was in a surprisingly good mood. It seemed that he had forgotten a lot of things. Manager, why did you suddenly ask me to eat with you? Xiaolu looked at Zhu Maolin, puzzled at this time. Zhu Maolin said calmly, if I say that I'm not in a good state during this time, I feel relieved when I feel at ease. But I don't know why, but when I see you, I inexplicably feel relaxed, so I plan to let you accompany me for a while longer. Do you believe me? Xiaolu was taken aback at this time. Then she shrank her neck and said, that. Manager Zhu, I'm very grateful to you for helping me. But I'm not what you think. I have some things that I can't do. It's okay. Just accompany me to have a meal. Zhu Maolin said calmly. You can't just send me away with instant noodles last time. It's not cost-effective. Xiaolu chuckled. Manager, you also know how to joke. Zhu Maolin looked out the window and said calmly, I haven't laughed for a long time. She hasn't laughed for a long time. Chapter 671. Even if he invited her to accompany him, Zhu Maolin didn't talk to little Lu frequently. The feeling was like being in a stuffy self-study room. Students who were busy would occasionally have a momentary conversation because they thought of something and then they would return to their original state. Little Lu's heart suddenly became subtle, probably because this man was somewhat different from most of the men she had contacted in the past. Perhaps it should be said that he was different from the men she had deliberately contacted in the past. But she wasn't surprised because she knew that there would always be some people in this world who were not affected by external things and had a strong heart. Yes, she knew that there were such men. If she deliberately looked for them, she could even find a lot of them. That was why she deliberately looked for those who were to her liking in the other direction. If the goal was on that end, then she would never have to reach it if she kept going in the opposite direction. There was no need to go there, because that end was too beautiful and pure, unlike reality. It was perfect like a dream, so that people were afraid that the end was just a sea city, Chenlu. In fact, it was just a dead end. Then, it would be beyond redemption. Therefore, she still walked in the opposite direction with her back to the front of the dreamy beauty. After all, she could clearly see and feel the truth, even if it was cruel. Don't you want to eat? What are you thinking about? Zhu Maolin picked up a piece of tripe from the hot pot with the serving chopsticks and put it in little Lu's bowl. Then he tapped the edge of the bowl with the chopsticks, making a ding-ding sound at the same time. Nothing. Little Lu quickly shook her head and said, I'm wondering if I will get fat if I eat so much. If I'm too fat, it will be difficult to find a job as a model. Zhu Maolin said indifferently, It seems that people have their own thoughts that they don't want others to know. He looked at little Lu as if he was imparting some experience. He said lightly, If you don't want to say it at this time, you don't have to say it. Just simply shake your head. Those who know how to advance and retreat will understand. Little Lu raised her face and said, But manager, most people still don't know how to advance and retreat. Sometimes, no matter how smart a person is, he will be confused by the situation. I'm asking you to eat with me, not to discuss philosophy with me. While Zhu Maolin said, he raised his hand and asked the waiter for a dip. Actually, today is my birthday. Little Jade lowered her head. Her voice was barely audible in a noisy crowd and the music in the shop. Birthday? Zhu Maolin showed curiosity. Little Jade quickly took out her wallet and then took out her ID card. She was like a child who desperately needed to be believed. I'm serious. I'm not lying. To be honest. Zhu Maolin's gaze swept across the ID card after all, and he shook his head. So far, I still feel like it's too much of a coincidence. But the truth is right there. I think we have no choice but to believe it. Take it back. Don't take it out casually. Indeed. Little Jade said, I've been bumping into him for the past few days. Actually, if it were me, I would also find it a little unbelievable. Zhu Maolin said indifferently, This city is both big and small. I have an old classmate. It's only a 40-minute walk from my house to his house. But we haven't seen each other in half a year. The last time we met was because of work. Little Lou raised her face again and looked at Zhu Maolin. Zhu Maolin chuckled, looking very relaxed. Maybe we didn't just meet and know each other in the past few days. We may have met long ago, but you didn't know me at that time, and I didn't know you, so I didn't care. That's true. Little Lou smiled. Zhu Maolin said, "Wait for me for a while." He then left here. Little Lou had no interest in these foods, especially the hot pot dishes. Swallowing the hot food made her feel as if she was burned by fire. So after Zhu Maolin left, she put down her chopsticks and turned off the induction cooker of the hot pot. Even these hot steam made her feel uncomfortable. Miao Xiaolu, is this your original name? When did you get this ID card? Suddenly, a young man with a scarf appeared next to the table. He bent down and looked at the ID card that had not been put away on the table. Then, he looked at little Lou again and asked curiously, "Sister 18, is today really your birthday? Do you think it's possible?" Little Lou glanced at him indifferently. "Didn't you go to check the details of the investor? Why are you here?" "I'm almost done checking." Wearing a scarf, Taisetsu sat down at this time, sitting in Zhu Maolin's seat. He didn't pay attention to it. He directly used his finger to make the cooked meatballs in the hot pot soup float up automatically and fly into his mouth. This is also a kind of exercise. Taisetsu thought so. Taisetsu chewed and said, "Zhu Maolin and his wife used to have a child. One night, a few years ago. It turns out that such a high-end hotel clubhouse opened in this place." Ho Chin Yuhan was a little surprised. If these madam students didn't bring her here, she really wouldn't know. Ho Chin Yuhan rarely came to such a place. In her impression, she had been busy since she got married. Later on, after she had her first child, she had even less free time for herself. Perhaps those wives of hers were right. If she were to relax her body once in a while, at the very least, the feeling of comfort brought by her body would make her feel relaxed temporarily. The unlit aromatherapy in the room and the numbness caused by the technician's fingers massaging her back with suitable strength made Ho Chin Yuhan feel empty. Of course, it would be better if there were no students gossiping next to her at this time. But if she was alone, it seemed to be no different from being at home. "Teacher Ho Chun, is this hotel spa, right?" The madam in the next bed turned her head with a look of enjoyment. "Women, if you don't take good care of yourself, it's easy to get old. We have to take care of ourselves more." This seemed to be a topic that would never change among them. Ho Chin Yuhan just smiled and didn't say anything. To be honest, she didn't have the time to worry about her age. After a while of enjoyment, the madam suddenly mysteriously pulled Ho Chin Yuhan, who had relaxed a lot, and walked toward the second floor of the hotel. "Teacher Ho Chun, we will take you to a good place." Ho Chin Yuhan was taken aback. She resisted the ambiguous gazes between the madams, but she had been pulled into the elevator, and she couldn't say anything. The elevator arrived. The moment the door was opened, a shocking feeling could be felt. This was the subwoofer of the sound system. "Is there a disco here on the second floor?" Ho Chin Yuhan was slightly surprised. Disco? She hadn't been there for a long time. In her impression, she should have just graduated. Before she became a ceramist, she and a few colleagues would occasionally go there to relax. "It's more fun than a disco." One of the madams narrowed her eyes. Several people pulled and pushed Ho Chin Yuhan to a door. At this time, there were two men in black suits standing in front of the door. After one of the madams took out a golden card, the two men opened the door respectfully. Suddenly, a heat wave-like breath came from the room. It was noisy and intoxicating, like the breath of a wild beast. In this huge room, multicolored laser lights were constantly moving. There were blue, green, red, and yellow lights. The waiters shuttled through the crowd. In addition to adapting to the environment, there were all women in the venue from young to old. A kind of group madness and strange vitality were exuding from these women at this moment. Ho Chin Yuhan opened her mouth, and her body was a little stiff. She was so stiff that it was difficult for her to move. Because at this time, when she looked up, she saw that on the T-shaped stage in the center of this big house, converted into a disco, there were several men with almost perfect figures. They only wore a pair of black underwear, and they were twisting various postures on the stage. Every man on the runway was surrounded by women who were screaming crazily. And in these men's underwear, they had long been stuffed with money. "Teacher Ho-chun, this place is great." Mrs. Zhang next to her looked like a wolf at this time. "I have arranged it. I will let one of the 12 golden ducks here greet you later." 12 golden ducks.